What can a loser like you do? My brother sneered as he said this. Living with him and his wife, I saw how they took advantage of our mother. She came to our house looking worn out and crying, saying, "I don't want to go back there." I couldn't shake the image of her distress as I clenched my teeth. "Are you really going to take care of that old hag? Can you even support her?" He mocked me. He treated our beloved mother so poorly and ridiculed me too. Anger bubbled up inside me, and I gripped my phone tightly, but I kept my voice calm and replied, "If you're okay with it, I'll take her in. My name is Rena, and I'm 30 years old. I've been married for 4 years and live a happy life with my kind husband and our 2-year-old daughter. We are blessed in our work and enjoy a joyful life." I looked at the calendar and checked my phone. Today is my mother's birthday. Happy 58th birthday, Mom. Are you okay? Is anything bothering you? I texted her and soon got a reply. "Thank you for your message. I'm doing fine. Don't worry. How are you and your family? I always pray for your happiness." Even after reading her response, I couldn't shake my worry. Right now, my mother lives with my brother and his wife in our childhood home. Our family used to consist of 4, my father, my mother, my older brother, and me. My father was strict and had old-fashioned views, controlling everyone around him. Because of him, my mother and I often felt oppressed. My maternal grandfather worked for my paternal grandfather's company. My mother was chosen to marry my father because of his family's wealth and power, almost like a hostage. When my father was supposed to take over the company, it failed because of the economic downturn, but they still had some money left. I never saw my father work. He spent his days drinking and yelling at my mother and me. Living in fear of his temper, my mother obeyed him. He believed women were inferior and treated my brother as if he was special. My brother got everything he wanted, while I could never express my desires. "Women shouldn't be greedy," my father would say. This made my brother feel entitled and always treat me like I was less than him, constantly mocking me. Growing up like this was painful, and I dreamed of leaving home as soon as I could. Even though I had excellent grades, my brother, who did poorly in school, was allowed to attend expensive private schools while my father wouldn't let me go to high school. He would say, "Women don't need education. It's a waste. You should get married soon or work a low-paying job." I remember when my brother called me a dumb girl and said I didn't deserve to go to high school. I cried out of frustration at the unfairness of it all. In the end, my mother secretly arranged for me to attend a boarding high school. Despite the tough situation at home, she always supported me. "Rena, it's okay. You can escape from here. You will find happiness," she told me. I remember my mother saying these words before I went off to high school. I graduated from university thanks to scholarships and money I earned myself. Since high school, I rarely returned home. I didn't attend my brother's wedding, and I didn't tell them when I got married, but I stayed in touch with my mother and occasionally met her. I truly owe who I am today to my mother. She is very important in my life. She was a gentle soul who may have seemed weak, but she loved me with all her heart. I always wished for her happiness. When my father died from his unhealthy lifestyle, I didn't attend the funeral, but I got shocking news from my mother. On his deathbed, my father told my brother and his wife to move back home and live with our mother. Ever since then, they have been living with her. I wanted to protest, but my mother said it was okay, so I didn't say anything more. Instead, I kept in touch with her. One day, I got a call from my brother, and I worried if he would take care of our mother properly. Was she really okay? I always felt uneasy about the situation. Eventually, my fears came true. One night, the intercom of my apartment rang unexpectedly. When I answered it, I found my mother standing there, looking ragged. Despite it being late fall, she wore a thin old short-sleeve shirt and a worn-out skirt. Her hair was messy, her cheeks were hollow, her eyes looked sunken, and she was trembling. I was shocked by her appearance and raised my voice. "Mom, what happened to you?" "Rena, I'm sorry to show up like this," she said in a weak voice, tears streaming down her face. I welcomed her in, and my husband quickly made her a warm drink and got her a blanket. Once she settled down, Mom began to speak slowly. After she started living with my brother and his wife, Nicole, things changed. They treated her like a maid. They made her do all the housework, and if it wasn't done to their satisfaction, my brother would scold her, calling her useless and a nuisance, even threatening to throw her out. Nicole called my mom an old hag and sold her few precious pieces of jewelry and clothes. They spread false rumors, saying my mom was a troublesome mother-in-law. Mom lost weight rapidly, and when she got sick and bedridden, they still forced her to do chores. Seeing her talk through her tears broke my heart. "Mom, why didn't you tell me you were suffering so much?" "Rena, I've caused you hardship since you were a child. I didn't want to burden you any further, she replied. I thought if I could just bear it, my mom said, her voice trembling. Then, I received an email. Oh, it's from Nicole. Where are you? You didn't do the laundry, and there's no food. Do you want your things to be sold again? The email made my mother's hands shake. I'm sorry, Rena, I don't want to go back to that house, she said. Hearing my mother's words, I pulled out my smartphone and dialed the number she had given me. After the dial tone, my brother picked up. Who's this? This is Rena, Mom's here with me. Oh, it's you. That old hag left without doing her chores? Tell her to come back immediately. It seems you've been treating Mom quite badly. I've heard everything, I replied, my voice trembling with anger. My brother just snorted and said, what about it? What can a dimwit like you do? You've been overworking Mom to the point of sickness, and you think that's okay? I won't let her live with you any longer. Do you really think you can support that old hag? She's been a housewife all her life, can't do anything, and has no money. Are you going to take her in? No more calling her old hag. She was a great housekeeper. A voice that sounded like his wife came from far away. They had been treating my dear mother so poorly, and even making fun of me. I couldn't stand it. A surge of rage filled me toward my brother and his wife, and my grip on the phone tightened. Still, I said calmly, if you say so, brother, then I will take Mom in. If you're going to take her, that's fine. It'll clear out some space in the house, and I'll be relieved. Understood. Mom will be living with me, so don't contact us anymore. I hung up the phone. Rena, I'll take good care of your mother, my husband said, taking my hand. Our daughter happily climbed onto my mother's lap, calling her grandma, and my mother hugged her, crying. Half a year later, our doorbell rang repeatedly. When I looked out, my angry brother was there, and next to him was a grumpy woman in a flashy outfit, probably his wife, Nicole. What do you want? How did you find out where we live? I asked. We looked it up. Just open up. There's something we want to ask you. My husband and mother stood by my side. I had my husband take our daughter into another room while my mother and I handled the situation. The first thing my brother said when he walked in was, "What's this about our house being sold?" "Oh, you got the message?" "Yes, my company bought your house," I replied calmly. "Your company? What are you talking about?" Exactly what I said. I'm the head of a well-known real estate company around here, so it's my company. By the way, doesn't the company you work for subcontract to us? When my brother heard the name of my real estate company, his face changed color. That's ridiculous. You, a dropout and a loser? You can't be the head of that company. If you're suspicious, why don't you call to verify? But please don't cause any trouble for the company, I said, showing him my business card. As soon as he saw it, my brother fell silent, his face turning red. After graduating from university, I had worked hard and was hired by a major real estate company. Later, I was headhunted as an executive for a new company. By the way, I met my husband at work, and we got married. He's a landowner, so I think we're considerably wealthier than you. There's no reason for you to call me a dropout or a loser. I can easily support Mom. My brother, wide-eyed and gritting his teeth, didn't respond. His wife looked shocked. Damn it, what about our family home? What do you mean you sold it? My brother yelled, nearly foaming at the mouth. My mother, who had been silent until now, finally spoke up. You may not know this, but after your father passed away, the house was transferred to my name. So, I sold the house and land to Rena's company using my rights. You should leave as soon as possible. What? What are you talking about, old woman? Wait, what's going on? You said that as the oldest son, the house was yours, didn't you? My brother and his wife were panicking, their faces changing rapidly. What's wrong with me selling something that's in my name? Sorry to break it to you, but I've broken free from your influence. I won't live as you dictate anymore, my mother said firmly. My brother yelled at her. What the hell are you talking about, you worthless old hag? His wife joined in. That's right, you've never worked a day in your life, just being supported by others. What are you talking about? Mom works hard. She manages an apartment building that my husband and I own. She's very friendly, always keeps the place clean, and is loved by the residents. And she gets paid for it too, I replied firmly. Hearing this, my brother, who had been standing, fell silent and slumped into a chair. Nicole whispered something in his ear. Knowing my prideful brother, he must have felt crushed by this unexpected defeat at the hands of his sister and the rejection from our mother. If there's nothing else, you can leave now, I don't want to be involved with you, I said. My brother lifted his head. His face, which had been filled with rage, now showed a fawning grin. All right, but listen, you're rich now, right? Then give me some money. I recently lost my job and I'm having money troubles. What? I was shocked at my brother's audacity. Hey, Mom could give money to me too. You got money from selling the house, right? Just think of it as helping out your adorable son and give me some cash, then I'll leave. Just as I was about to respond, my mother raised her voice. Enough already, have some shame. I was taken aback to see my usually gentle mother speaking like that for the first time. My brother and his wife looked stunned too. I apologize for raising you to prey on your sister like a shameless creature, but there are things you should and shouldn't do. Don't disturb us anymore, go home. Hearing this, my brother started to tremble again. Shut up and listen, old hag, you're telling me what's what. Be prepared, I'll squeeze every dime of your inheritance from you. Nicole added, yes, give us the money already. To these two, my mother coldly replied, that's if there's anything left. From now on, I plan to spend all the money from the sale of the house on myself and Rena and her family. I have no intention of leaving a single penny for you two. What the hell, you old crone, my brother yelled. I'm cutting ties with both of you from now on. Please stay away from me and Rena. Leave that house immediately. Seeing my mother stand up to them like this made me so proud. I wanted to applaud. I was genuinely happy that she, who had always been oppressed and obedient, was finally free from the curse of that house. Do you understand now? Please go home, I said, rubbing my mother's trembling back. Damn, no, we won't leave. We'll squat in that house until we get the money at least. My brother and his wife glared at us. Then, a low, calm voice echoed in the room. What do you mean you won't leave? Standing there was my husband. In his gentle voice, he spoke to my mother-in-law. I'm sorry, could you please watch our daughter? You did great, don't worry about the rest, everything will be fine. Hearing my husband's words, my mother said, thank you, and got up from her chair. Looking at my husband, my brother and his wife turned pale, their eyes widening in surprise. What? Who are you? Nice to meet you, I am Rena's husband. By the way, what were you saying to my wife and mother-in-law earlier? He asked with a straight face. My brother and his wife suddenly became docile. That was to be expected. My husband is tall at 6'3", with a solid build and a strong, imposing face. He holds a black belt in judo. Despite his peaceful nature, his kindness toward me, his intellect, and his love for our daughter make him seem intimidating to those meeting him for the first time, especially to someone like my brother, who could only show off and look down on women. My husband is the type that's difficult to handle. Oh, I just remembered I have something to do, so I should be going. Yes, let's go. My brother and his wife quickly changed their attitude and left. Their retreat was so comical that I had to hold back my laughter. In the quiet house, my husband touched my shoulder and said, you did well, you must be tired. My mother appeared, holding my daughter, her face bright. We embraced each other without saying a word. Fast forward 1 year, my husband, my mother, and I continued to share a harmonious relationship. My mother kept her job as a building superintendent, and compared to that night when she showed up looking worn out, she was now lively and healthy. She adored and took care of my daughter, which was a great help to me. Of course, my daughter adored her grandmother too and often stuck to her. Watching them brought happiness to both my husband and me. As for my brother, believe it or not, he divorced shortly after that incident. He lost his house and his money, and when he showed my husband his pathetic state, Nicole quickly left him. Now, Nicole is trying to remarry through dating, but her nasty nature and ulterior motives for money make it hard for her to find anyone. My brother was kicked out of his family home, jobless, and living alone in a rundown apartment while struggling with part-time jobs. Of course, I have no intention of helping him since he brought this upon himself. My mother and I plan to live without getting involved with him any further. By the way, we are planning to build a large 2-family home soon. We could continue living in the condo my husband owns, but as my mother pointed out, it would get cramped as our daughter grows. Let me use all the money from selling the house, she said, and we gratefully accepted. We chuckled at her enthusiasm and looked forward to living happily together in our new home.
The aroma of freshly baked bread filled my kitchen at 4 a.m., just like every morning for the past 5 years. While most of Boston's financial district still slept, I was already elbow deep in dough, preparing for another day at Sweet Success Bakery. The irony of the name wasn't lost on me. My family had mockingly suggested it when I first opened, certain I would fail within months. I'm Rose Hamilton, the youngest daughter of the Hamilton family, once one of Boston's most prominent business dynasties. I say once, because at this very moment, Hamilton Enterprises was facing bankruptcy, and my family's empire was crumbling. Not that they knew I was aware of their financial troubles. They'd stopped speaking to me years ago when I chose baking over banking. The industrial mixer hummed steadily as I prepared another batch of croissant dough. My assistant manager, Lisa, would arrive in an hour, followed by the rest of my staff. My little bakery now employed 30 people across 3 locations. Though my family didn't know that either, they still pictured me in a tiny storefront, playing at being a business owner while they ran their real company. My phone buzzed, an email from James Chen, my financial advisor. Confidential. Hamilton Enterprises stock dropped another 15% yesterday. They'll have to declare bankruptcy by end of week, unless they find a buyer. Shall we proceed as discussed? I smiled, remembering the last family dinner I'd attended 5 years ago. It was the night I announced I was leaving my position as junior financial analyst at Hamilton Enterprises to open a bakery. A bakery. My older sister Catherine had laughed, nearly choking on her wine. What a waste of your business degree. Really, Rose? My father sighed, looking disappointed as usual. This is beneath you, beneath this family. My mother simply shook her head, while my brother Alexander, the CEO of Hamilton Enterprises, smirked. Well, when your little hobby fails, don't come crying to us for a job. I had walked out that night and never looked back. What they didn't know was that I'd seen the warning signs even then. Questionable accounting practices, risky investments, Alexander's increasing desperation to maintain the appearance of success. I had tried to warn them, but who would listen to the baby of the family who just wanted to bake cookies? So I had quietly built my own empire while theirs began to crack. Sweet Success wasn't just a bakery. It was the flagship of Sweet Success Enterprises, a corporation that now included a wholesale business supplying high-end restaurants, a cooking school, and a line of specialty baking ingredients sold in stores across New England. Last year's revenue, $22 million. But on paper, everything was hidden under shell companies and different names. To the world, and my family, I was just the owner of a modest bakery chain. The bell above the back door chimed as Lisa arrived. Morning, boss. Ready for another busy day? I wiped flour from my hands and checked my phone one more time. Another email, this one from my lawyer. All paperwork in place. Ready to move whenever you give the word. More than ready, I replied to Lisa, thinking of the meeting I knew was coming. Soon, my family would have no choice but to turn to the one person they had underestimated all these years. The morning rush kept us busy, as usual. Executives from nearby financial firms lined up for our famous almond croissants and fresh brewed coffee. Several faces I recognized from Hamilton Enterprises. Mid-level managers who had no idea their company was about to implode, or that their CEO's little sister was the one serving them breakfast. Around 10 a.m., my phone rang, a number I hadn't seen in years. Catherine. Rose? Her voice had lost its usual condescending tone, replaced by barely concealed panic. We need to talk. It's important. I kept my voice neutral. I'm rather busy, Catherine. The bakery, you know. Please, she almost whispered. It's about the company. We need your help. I closed my eyes, savoring the moment I had known would come. I have a meeting with my wholesale suppliers at 2 p.m. I could meet you at 4. Thank you, she breathed. The company office? No, I said firmly. My office, above the bakery. There was a pause. I could almost hear her swallowing her pride. Fine, we'll be there. After hanging up, I called James. They're coming? Is everything ready? All set, he confirmed. I've prepared all the documentation showing exactly how Alex mismanaged the company. The board is already secretly on board with our plan. They just need your family to agree. I thanked him and went back to work, losing myself in the rhythm of baking. People often asked why I still worked in the kitchen when I could afford to step back. The truth was, I found peace in the precision of pastry, the chemistry of baking. While Alexander had played with numbers to make failures look like successes, I had built something real, something people could taste and touch and enjoy. At 3:55 p.m., I changed out of my flour-dusted chef's coat into a crisp black blazer. I had just settled behind my desk when Lisa knocked. "They're here," she said, trying to hide her excitement. She was one of the few who knew the full story. All 3 of them. I nodded. Send them up. Catherine entered first, her designer heels clicking on the hardwood floor. She looked thinner than I remembered, stress evident in the lines around her eyes. Alexander followed, his once immaculate suit slightly rumpled, his confident stride replaced by a nervous shuffle. My father came last, and my heart clenched. He had aged decades in 5 years. They took in my office with poorly concealed surprise. The space was professional, elegant even, with large windows overlooking the financial district. Framed magazine articles hung on one wall. Sweet Success, Boston's rising star in artisanal baking, innovation in traditional pastry, 30 under 30, food entrepreneurs. I wondered if they'd ever bothered to read any of them. Thank you for meeting with us, Catherine began, clearly appointed as spokesperson. We need your signature. I raised an eyebrow. My signature? Alexander exploded. Don't play dumb, Rose. You still own 15% of Hamilton Enterprises. We need all shareholders to agree to the sale, or everything is lost. I leaned back in my chair. The sale to Global Dynamics? For pennies on the dollar? The same sale that would leave all our employees without severance, our suppliers unpaid, and our family name in ruins? They stared at me. How did you? Catherine started. No, I finished. I may have left the company, but I never stopped watching. I saw every mistake, every bad decision, every time Alexander cooked the books to hide his failures. Alexander lunged forward. You have no proof. I opened my desk drawer and pulled out a thick folder. Actually, I have every proof. Every document, every questionable transaction, every risky investment that brought us to this point. I met my father's eyes. I tried to warn you 5 years ago, but you wouldn't listen to the daughter who just wanted to bake cookies. The room fell silent except for the distant hum of traffic below. Through the window, I could see the Hamilton Enterprises building towering over the city. By this time tomorrow, it might have a new owner. What do you want? My father finally asked, his voice heady with defeat. I stood up slowly. I want to save the company, save the jobs, save our family's legacy. I pressed a button on my phone. James, please come in. The door opened, and James entered with another folder. My family's eyes widened as they recognized one of Boston's top financial advisors. But to do that, I continued. Things will have to change, starting with the management. Alexander's face turned red. You can't. I can. I cut him off. Because right now, I'm the only one who can save Hamilton Enterprises from complete collapse. The only question is... I smiled, thinking of all the times they had dismissed me, mocked me, underestimated me. Are you ready to listen to the little sister who just bakes cookies? Catherine was the first to recover from the shock. What exactly are you suggesting, Rose? She asked, her lawyer's mind already calculating angles and possibilities. I gestured to James, who began distributing documents to my stunned family members. Sweet Success Enterprises, he explained, is prepared to purchase a controlling interest in Hamilton Enterprises. The offer is significantly higher than Global Dynamics and includes provisions to protect all current employees and suppliers. Alexander flipped through the papers, his face growing redder with each page. Sweet Success Enterprises? This bakery? He laughed, but there was a note of hysteria in it. You can't be serious. Actually, I pressed a button on my laptop, turning the wall-mounted screen on to display a corporate overview. Sweet Success Enterprises is a privately held corporation with annual revenue of $22 million, zero debt, and significant cash reserves. We own 3 retail locations, a wholesale division supplying 122 restaurants across New England, a culinary education center, and a specialty ingredients brand sold in over 500 stores. My father's hands trembled as he studied the financials. How? When did you build all this? While you were busy mocking my little bakery, I said quietly. I was building an empire. One customer, one product, one location at a time. No shortcuts, no cooked books, no risky investments. Just honest work and genuine growth. Catherine's legal training kicked in. Who owns Sweet Success Enterprises? I do, I replied simply. Through a series of holding companies that kept my name off any public documents. I wanted to succeed or fail on my own merits, not the Hamilton name. Alexander slammed his hand on my desk. This is ridiculous. You're trying to steal my company. Your company? I stood up slowly. The company you drove into the ground. The company where 300 people might lose their jobs because of your mismanagement? That company? James cleared his throat. The board has already been briefed on our proposal. They're quite enthusiastic about it. He went behind my back to the board. Alexander's face turned purple. No, Alex. The board came to us. I pulled up another document on the screen. Dozens of emails from board members expressing concerns about Alexander's leadership. They've been watching you spiral for years. They just needed a viable alternative. My father, silent until now, finally spoke. What are your terms? I sat back down, folding my hands on my desk. Sweet Success Enterprises will purchase a 60% stake in Hamilton Enterprises at $42 per share, more than double what Global Dynamics offered. All current employees keep their jobs, all supplier contracts are honored, and the Hamilton name stays on the building. And what about us? Catherine asked. You and Dad can keep your current positions with some oversight. As for Alexander, I met my brother's furious gaze. He resigns, effective immediately, with a generous severance package and agreement to never serve as an officer in any Hamilton company again. You can't do this to me, Alexander shouted. I'm the CEO, the eldest son. Being born first doesn't make you a good leader, Alex, I said firmly. Your decisions have brought us to this point. The only question now is whether you want to leave with dignity and wealth or face criminal charges for financial fraud. The room fell silent except for Alexander's heady breathing. Catherine studied the offer documents with her lawyer's eye, while my father seemed to age another decade in his chair. "The board meeting is tomorrow at 9 a.m., James added. "They'll vote on either this proposal or bankruptcy. Those are the only options left." My father stood up suddenly. "I need to make some calls." "Of course." I gestured to a private office adjacent to mine. "Use my conference room." As he walked out, I saw him glance at the magazine covers on my wall, really seeing them for the first time. His expression was unreadable. Catherine followed him, already on her phone, likely calling other shareholders. Alexander remained, staring at me with a mixture of hatred and disbelief. "How long have you been planning this?" he demanded. "I haven't been planning anything, Alex. I've been building my own successful company while watching you destroy ours. The only difference is, I learned from Mom and Dad's real legacy." "What legacy?" he scoffed. "Hard work, integrity, creating actual value instead of just moving numbers around." I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city we both loved. "Did you know Mom started Hamilton Enterprises in our garage? Dad was still teaching high school then. They built it from nothing, one client at a time, just like I built Sweet Success. And now you're going to destroy everything they built." I turned back to him. "No, Alex, I'm going to save it. From you." The next 12 hours passed in a blur of lawyers, documents, and negotiations. My father emerged from countless phone calls, looking exhausted but resigned. Catherine's legal expertise actually proved helpful as we hammered out the final details. Alexander alternated between rage and desperate bargaining, but in the end, faced with the choice between a generous exit package and potential criminal charges, he signed the resignation papers. At 9 a.m. sharp the next morning, I walked into the Hamilton Enterprises boardroom for the first time in 5 years. The same boardroom where I'd been patronized and dismissed as the baby of the family who didn't understand real business. The vote was unanimous. By 10 a.m., the press release went out. Hamilton Enterprises announces merger with Sweet Success Enterprises. The business world was shocked to learn that the humble bakery chain was actually the parent company of a highly successful private corporation, and that the youngest Hamilton had secretly become one of Boston's most successful entrepreneurs. CNBC ran the headline, "Cookie Queen Saves Family Empire." Bloomberg went with Sweet Success, "How a Bakery Bought a Banking Giant." The Wall Street Journal's was my favorite. "Rising Dough. Hamilton Scion transforms from black sheep to white knight." The following weeks were intense. I split my time between Sweet Success and Hamilton Enterprises, working to stabilize the company while maintaining the standards of excellence at my bakeries. I hired Alex a replacement, a seasoned CEO with a proven track record of ethical leadership, and began the process of unwinding his riskier ventures. Catherine proved surprisingly adaptable, throwing herself into learning about Sweet Success's operations with the same intensity she'd once applied to corporate law. My father mostly kept to himself, though I occasionally caught him watching me with an expression that looked almost like pride. 1 month after the takeover, I arrived at my original bakery location at my usual time, 4 a.m. Some habits don't change, even when you're running 2 companies. I needed the peace of those early morning hours, the simple pleasure of creating something with my own hands. I was elbow deep in bread dough when I heard the door open. Turning, I found my father standing awkwardly in the kitchen, looking out of place in his expensive suit. "Dad, what are you doing here so early?" He stepped forward, inhaling deeply. "It smells like Mom's kitchen," he said softly. Remember how she used to bake every Sunday? I nodded, unexpected tears pricking my eyes. Mom had died when I was in college, before I discovered my passion for baking. But those Sunday mornings, watching her create incredible pastries while explaining the chemistry behind them, had clearly influenced me more than I'd realized. I never told you, Dad continued, but she always said you were just like her. She saw something in you, a blend of creativity and business sense that reminded her of herself. He picked up one of our signature almond croissants. She would have loved this place. Dad, no, let me finish. He set the croissant down carefully. I was wrong, Rose. We all were. We were so focused on maintaining the appearance of success that we forgot what real success looks like. He gestured around the busy kitchen. This is real. What you've built is real. And, he swallowed hard, I'm proud of you. I wiped my flour-covered hands on my apron and hugged him, not caring about his expensive suit. For a moment, we were just father and daughter, surrounded by the smell of fresh bread and new beginnings. The next few months saw both companies flourish. Hamilton Enterprises' stock price recovered as confidence returned to the market. Sweet Success opened 2 new locations and launched a cookbook that became an instant bestseller. Catherine now runs our legal department, bringing her expertise to bear protecting both companies' interests. My father serves as an advisor, though he's mostly retired, focusing on teaching business ethics at local colleges. An ironic twist that's not lost on anyone. Alexander? Last I heard, he moved to Florida and opened a jet ski rental company. Some people never learn. As for me, I still start every day in the kitchen at 4 a.m., even though I could afford to never work another day in my life. Because success isn't just about money or power or proving people wrong. It's about staying true to yourself, building something real, and remembering where you came from. Every morning, as I knead dough and check the ovens, I think about how far I've come from that family dinner 5 years ago. The little bakery they mocked has become the foundation of an empire, but more importantly, it's become a testament to the power of believing in yourself, even when no one else does. The original recipe for our signature almond croissants hangs framed in my office now, right next to the merger documents that saved Hamilton Enterprises. 2 different kinds of success, both equally sweet. Last week, a young woman came into the bakery, clearly nervous. She told me she was leaving her corporate job to open a small cafe, and her family thought she was crazy. Could I give her any advice? I smiled, thinking of all the twists and turns that had brought me to this moment. Follow your passion, I told her, but never forget your business sense. Success is like baking. It takes the right ingredients, careful measurement, perfect timing, and most importantly, patience. Then I gave her my card, my real card, the one with both company logos on it. Her eyes widened as she realized who I was. But most importantly, I added, don't let anyone tell you your dreams are too small. Sometimes the smallest seeds grow into the strongest trees. She left clutching my card like a talisman, standing a little straighter. I watched her go, remembering another young woman who once dared to believe she could build something meaningful, one cookie at a time. The smell of fresh bread filled the air, and somewhere in the financial district, the Hamilton Enterprises building caught the morning sun, its windows gleaming like possibility itself. Sweet success, indeed. The aroma of freshly baked bread filled my kitchen at 4 a.m., just like every morning for the past 5 years. While most of Boston's financial district still slept, I was already elbow-deep in dough, preparing for another day at Sweet Success Bakery. The irony of the name wasn't lost on me. My family had mockingly suggested it when I first opened, certain I would fail within months. I'm Rose Hamilton, the youngest daughter of the Hamilton family, once one of Boston's most prominent business dynasties. I say once, because at this very moment, my name is Olivia Blackwood, and I always thought my family's wealth came from generations of smart real estate investments. That's what the plaque in our mansion's foyer proclaimed. Blackwood Properties, established 1892. That's what my parents told me at every family dinner. That's what everyone in our affluent circle believed. But they were all wrong. The truth began to unravel the day I decided to renovate our family mansion. At 32, I had finally convinced my parents to let me modernize the aging Victorian estate. They agreed reluctantly, with one strange condition: the basement was strictly off limits. The foundation is delicate, my mother insisted, her usually confident voice wavering slightly. Any disturbance could compromise the entire structure. I should have noticed how her hands trembled when she said this, how my father's face turned ashen at the mere mention of renovation. But I was too excited about finally bringing the mansion into the 21st century to pay attention to these warning signs. The first few weeks of renovation went smoothly. We updated the kitchen, restored the grand staircase, and modernized the electrical systems. Everything was going according to plan until Marcus, my lead contractor, discovered something odd behind the wine cellar walls. "Miss Blackwood," he called one afternoon, his voice echoing through the empty halls. "You might want to see this." I followed him down to the wine cellar, where his team had been installing new temperature control systems. They had removed some of the old wooden panels, revealing something that made my blood run cold: a door. Not just any door, but a heavy iron door with an intricate locking mechanism, carefully hidden behind decades of careful carpentry. "This isn't on any of the building plans," Marcus said, shining his flashlight on the rusted hinges. "And look at this craftsmanship. This was built to last, to keep something in or out." I reached out to touch the cold metal, my fingers tracing the elaborate engravings on its surface. They formed a pattern I recognized, the same pattern that appeared on my great-grandfather's signet ring, the one my father still wore every day. "Can you open it?" I asked, my curiosity overshadowing the echo of my mother's warnings. Marcus examined the lock. "It's old, but not complicated. Give me a few minutes." The sound of his tools working on the lock seemed to grow louder in the confined space. Each click and scrape sent shivers down my spine. Finally, with a loud groan, the door swung open. The beam of Marcus's flashlight revealed a narrow corridor stretching into darkness. The air that rushed out was stale, carrying with it the musty smell of secrets long buried. "I'll go first," I said, taking the flashlight from Marcus's hand. "Wait here." The corridor was longer than I expected, its walls lined with shelves holding leather-bound ledgers and stacked papers. At the end stood a massive oak desk, its surface covered in dust, except for one spot, a fresh handprint. Someone had been here recently. My hands trembling, I picked up the nearest ledger. Its pages were filled with neat columns of numbers and names, dates stretching back to the 1890s. As I read, my eyes widened in horror. These weren't real estate transactions. They were something else entirely. Suddenly, I heard footsteps behind me. Before I could turn, a familiar voice spoke. "I told you not to come down here, Olivia." I spun around to face my father, barely recognizing the man illuminated by my flashlight. His usually warm eyes were cold, his face set in grim determination. In his hand, he clutched a small key, the same key I had seen him wearing on a chain around his neck since I was a child. "Dad," I whispered, clutching the ledger to my chest. What is all this? He stepped forward, his shadow looming large on the corridor walls. Put the book down, Olivia. Some secrets should stay buried. But it was too late. I had already seen enough to understand that everything I knew about my family was a lie. The Blackwood fortune wasn't built on real estate at all. It was built on something much darker, something that explained why certain families in our city had mysteriously disappeared over the years, why our basement was always off limits, and why my great-grandfather's portrait seemed to watch us with such sinister satisfaction. I took a step back, bumping into the old desk. Dad, these records, these names. You don't understand, he said, advancing slowly. Everything we did for the family, for our legacy. Behind him, I heard more footsteps. My mother appeared in the doorway, her face pale in the dim light. Harrison, she called to my father, her voice urgent. She needs to know. It's time. My father stopped, his shoulders sagging slightly. She's not ready. I wasn't ready either, my mother replied. But the legacy must continue. And now that she's found this place. She gestured to the room full of dark secrets. She needs to understand her inheritance. I looked between them. These people I thought I knew so well, suddenly strangers in the shadows of our family's true history. The ledger in my hands felt heavy with the weight of generations of secrets. And as my parents began to tell me the truth about the Blackwood legacy, I realized that the renovation of our old mansion had uncovered more than just hidden rooms and forgotten doorways. It had uncovered the dark foundation upon which our entire family fortune was built, a foundation that would soon force me to make an impossible choice between preserving my family's legacy and saving my own soul. The basement air grew colder as my parents led me deeper into the hidden corridor. My father's signet ring gleamed in the flashlight beam as he pulled out another leather-bound book from the shelves. The Blackwood legacy began in 1892. He started, his voice taking on a tone I'd never heard before. Your great-grandfather, Edmund Blackwood, wasn't just a real estate developer. He was what you might call a collector of debts. He opened the book, revealing pages of names, dates, and amounts. But these weren't ordinary loans. Each entry ended with the same chilling note: property acquired through complete forfeiture. I don't understand, I said, though a horrible suspicion was beginning to form. My mother's hand touched my shoulder. Edmund discovered something powerful during the economic crisis of the 1890s. People would do anything to save their homes, their businesses, their families. Anything? My voice trembled. He offered them contracts, my father continued. Magical contracts, bound by blood and ancient rituals. They would receive whatever they desperately needed: money, power, success. In return, they pledged something far more valuable than mere property: their souls. I whispered, the words feeling ridiculous even as they left my mouth. But my parents didn't laugh. Not exactly, my mother said. Their fate, their future, everything they could or would become. When the contract came due, they simply disappeared. Their properties, their wealth, everything transferred to the Blackwood family. I stared at the ledger, understanding now why certain names seemed familiar. They were prominent families who had mysteriously vanished over the years, their disappearances written off as accidents or unexplained tragedies. The contracts, my father explained, were designed by Edmund using knowledge he gained from certain entities, beings that exist in the spaces between what's real and what's not. They ensure the terms are met, one way or another. My mother pulled out another book, this one newer. The business evolved over time. We became more selective, more discreet. Instead of targeting desperate families, we focused on ambitious individuals, people who would trade anything for success. Like the Haritons last year, I remembered suddenly. They won the state lottery, became overnight millionaires. Then their private plane crashed 6 months later. They knew the terms, my father said coldly. 6 months of wealth and success, then complete forfeiture. Everything they gained, everything they were, became part of the Blackwood fortune. This is insane. I backed away from them. You're telling me our entire family fortune is built on stealing people's lives, their futures? Building, my mother corrected. Present tense. The contracts are still active. In fact, she hesitated, glancing at my father. There's one being negotiated right now. As if on cue, my phone buzzed. A text from Marcus, my contractor. Miss Blackwood, there's someone here to see you about the renovation budget. Says it's urgent. My blood ran cold. The renovation costs, I said slowly. They're higher than expected. You knew I'd need more funding. My father nodded. We arranged for someone to offer help. Someone desperate enough to sign a new contract. No, I shook my head. I won't be part of this. You already are, my mother said firmly. You're a Blackwood. The legacy passes to you now. You must learn to manage the contracts, to maintain the family business. And if I refuse, my father's expression darkened. You can't. The moment you entered this room, you became bound to the legacy. The entities that enforce our contracts. They're aware of you now. I looked around the room, suddenly feeling watched by something beyond the shadows. The air seemed to thicken, and in the corners of my vision, I caught glimpses of movement that shouldn't be possible. There's more, my mother added. The contracts require active management. If the Blackwood line fails to maintain them, she shuddered. Let's just say the entities would claim everything, including us. I sank into the old desk chair, my mind reeling. How many? I asked. How many active contracts are there? My father pulled out a modern laptop, incongruous in this ancient space. Currently, 47, each with different terms, different due dates. They need to be monitored, managed. New ones need to be created to maintain the balance. The contractor upstairs, I realized, he would be number 48. If you approve the contract, my mother nodded. It's your decision now. Your first test as the new keeper of the Blackwood legacy. My phone buzzed again. Marcus, Miss Blackwood? He's getting impatient. I stared at the message, understanding now that I stood at a crossroads. I could run, try to escape this dark inheritance, but my parents' warnings about the consequences rang in my ears. Or I could embrace it, become what generations of Blackwoods had been, collectors of fates, dealers in futures. Standing up, I straightened my jacket and took a deep breath. I need to see all the contracts, every detail. If I'm going to be responsible for this, I need to understand everything. My parents exchanged relieved looks. Of course, my father said, moving toward a modern filing cabinet hidden in the shadows. But first, you need to deal with the situation upstairs. I walked toward the door, then paused. Just tell me one thing. When you paid for my college education, for my first apartment, for everything, whose fate paid for it? The silence that followed was deafening. The Middletons, my mother finally answered. Remember them? The family that owned the bakery downtown. I did remember. They had vanished during my freshman year of college. Their bakery, their home, Everything they owned had been mysteriously abandoned overnight. As I climbed the stairs back to the main house, each step felt heavier than the last. Upstairs, a desperate person waited, ready to trade their future for immediate success. And I had to decide whether to continue my family's dark legacy or find another way, if another way even existed. What I didn't know then was that my decision would set in motion a chain of events that would either secure the Blackwood fortune forever or destroy everything my family had built over the past century. I pushed open the basement door, stepping back into the world of light and normalcy. But now I understood. Our mansion wasn't just a symbol of wealth and success. It was a repository of stolen fates, a fortress built on disappeared lives. And I was its new keeper. Marcus waited in the grand foyer, standing next to a man I'd never seen before. The stranger wore an ill-fitting suit and clutched a worn briefcase. Samuel Thompson, according to the contract papers my father had slipped into my hand before I came upstairs. Miss Blackwood, Marcus nodded. Mr. Thompson here has an interesting proposition about funding the renovation. I studied Thompson carefully. Middle-aged, desperate eyes, wedding ring. A man with a family, with a future my family's legacy would erase. Let's talk in the study, I said, leading them away from the basement door. The study walls were lined with photographs, generations of Blackwoods standing proudly in front of their various properties. Now, I understood why none of the pictures included the previous owners. I understand you're having financial difficulties with the renovation, Thompson began, his voice trembling slightly. I represent certain investors who could help. I opened the contract my father had prepared. The terms were clear. Thompson would receive $5 million, enough to save his failing business and put his kids through college. In return, he and his entire family would forfeit their future existence in exactly 3 years. My hand shook as I placed the contract on the desk. One signature, and I would become just like my parents, like my grandfather, like all the Blackwoods before them, a collector of souls, a trader of fates. Mr. Thompson, I said slowly, before we discuss terms, I need to show you something. I led him back to the basement, ignoring my parents' shocked expressions when we entered the hidden room. Thompson's eyes widened as he took in the shelves of ledgers, the ancient desk, the feeling of otherworldly presence that permeated the space. What is this place? This, I said, pulling out the most recent ledger, is where we keep the real contracts. The ones that explain exactly what happens to people who make deals with my family. My father stepped forward. Olivia, stop this immediately. But I continued, showing Thompson the entries. The Harringtons, the Middletons, dozens of families who had vanished after signing away their futures. The money you're being offered isn't just money. It's lives, futures, stolen from people like you who were desperate enough to sign without understanding the true cost. The air in the room grew colder. In the corners of my vision, shadows moved in impossible ways. I felt them watching, waiting, those entities my father had mentioned. Olivia, my mother's voice was sharp with warning. You're endangering everything. No, I stood my ground. I'm ending everything. I turned to Thompson, who had gone pale. Go home to your family. Whatever trouble you're in, it's better than the alternative. Trust me. After Thompson flowed, I faced my parents. The ledgers began to vibrate on their shelves. Dark shapes coalesced in the shadows. Do you have any idea what you've done? My father's voice shook with rage and fear. The contracts must continue. The entities require regular tributes. Without new contracts, they'll take everything, my mother finished. Including us. It's how the original deal was structured. The entities get everything if the Blackwood line fails to maintain the cycle. I picked up the oldest ledger, my great-grandfather's first record of deals and forfeitures. Then let them take it. The shadows in the room solidified into forms that hurt my eyes to look at. The temperature dropped to freezing. I found something else in these records, I continued, opening the book to a marked page. A clause in the original agreement. The entities can be bound and banished if someone of Blackwood blood willingly sacrifices the entire fortune. Everything gained through the contracts, freely given up. My parents lunged forward, but it was too late. I had already begun the words written in the margin of that first ledger, my great-grandfather's contingency plan that no Blackwood had ever been willing to use. The entities swirled around us, their presence becoming more solid with each word I spoke. The fortune my family had accumulated over generations, properties, money, stolen futures, began to dissolve. I felt it leaving. My trust fund, my apartments, everything I owned that had been bought with Blackwood money. More importantly, I felt the contracts breaking. Somewhere, the Harritons were returning to existence. The Middletons were reclaiming their stolen futures. My parents screamed as their own wealth evaporated. The mansion itself began to fade, decades of stolen prosperity returning to their rightful owners. When it was over, we stood in an empty basement. No hidden room, no ancient desk, no ledgers full of dark contracts. Just concrete walls and the remnants of what had once been the Blackwood fortune. "What have you done?" my father whispered, looking at his empty hands. His signet ring had vanished with everything else. "I chose a different legacy," I answered. "One we can build ourselves without stealing other people's futures." My mother sank to the floor, her designer clothes replaced by simple garments. "We're nothing now." "No one." "No," I helped her up. "We're finally freed to be something real." Upstairs, Marcus and his renovation crew had vanished. The contract that brought them here no longer existed. The mansion was just a house now, old but ordinary. No more hidden rooms, no more dark secrets. I walked out the front door, where my car had been replaced by a modest used model, the last vestige of my previous life transformed into something honestly earned. The sun was setting over what had once been the Blackwood estate. Tomorrow, I would wake up just like everyone else, without wealth or privilege, but also without the weight of generations of stolen fates. I pulled out my phone and deleted the name Blackwood Properties from my contacts. It was time to build something new, something clean. As I drove away, I glanced in my rearview mirror. The mansion seemed smaller now, just another old house with history, but no more dark secrets. The entities were gone, the contracts broken, the futures returned. The Blackwood legacy was over, but mine was just beginning. 10 years later, I stood in front of a different building, the headquarters of New Horizons Development, my new company, built from scratch, with honest work and legitimate contracts. No hidden rooms, no stolen futures. My parents eventually adapted to normal life. My father found work as a real estate agent, dealing in actual properties instead of supernatural contracts. My mother started a small interior design business. We weren't wealthy anymore, but we were real. Sometimes late at night, I still dream about that hidden room and the entities that dwelled there. But then I wake up and look at what I've built, a life that's truly mine, a success that didn't cost anyone else their future. The plaque on my office wall reads, "Founded 2023, a new legacy, started by choice rather than inheritance." And in my desk drawer, I keep one thing from that old basement, A blank page from my great-grandfather's ledger. A reminder that sometimes the most valuable thing you can inherit is the chance to choose a different path. The Blackwood fortune may be gone, but in its place, something better grew. A family that finally learned the true meaning of building a legacy, one that doesn't require stealing someone else's future to secure your own. I never planned to keep my success a secret. But after a decade of watching my family mock my career choices while living in my private penthouse overlooking Central Park, I had grown accustomed to the irony of it all. My name is Olivia Winters, though the business world knows me only as O.W. Blackwood, the reclusive founder and CEO of Blackwood Innovations. To my family, I'm just their disappointing middle child who wastes her time with freelance tech consulting instead of joining the family law firm. The day everything changed started like any other. I was reviewing acquisition reports in my private office on the top floor of Blackwood Tower when my assistant, Michael, rushed in with an unusual expression on his face. "Ms. Winters, you need to see these job applications," he said, placing a tablet in front of me. They just came through HR. I glanced at the screen and nearly choked on my coffee. There, in pristine digital formatting, were the resumes of my sister Diane and my brother James. Both had applied for executive positions at Blackwood Innovations. "There's more," Michael added, scrolling to another document. "Your father's law firm is also pitching their services to our legal department. The meeting is scheduled for next week." I leaned back in my chair, memories flooding back from 10 years ago. I was fresh out of college with a computer science degree, pitching my ideas for revolutionary software architecture to my family over dinner. "Tech startups are a dime a dozen," my father had scoffed, barely looking up from his legal briefs. "Winters and Associates has been a respected law firm for 3 generations. That's real success, not this coding nonsense." Diane, 2 years older and already a junior partner at the firm, had smirked. "Come on, Dad. Let her play with her computers. She can always come work as our IT support when she fails." Only my younger brother James had shown any interest, but even that was condescending. "Maybe you could build us a better website for the firm," he had suggested, as if that was the height of technological achievement. I left that dinner knowing I would never convince them to see my vision. So I stopped trying. Instead, I took my savings, borrowed against my trust fund, and started working in absolute secrecy. The first few years were brutal. I worked out of a tiny apartment, taking legitimate freelance jobs while building my company on the side. Every family gathering became an exercise in restraint as they pitied my struggling career. "Still doing that freelance thing?" became their constant refrain, always tinged with mock concern and real condescension. What they didn't know was that my freelance thing was a cover for building one of the most innovative software companies in the world. Blackwood Innovations revolutionized enterprise architecture, cloud computing, and artificial intelligence. By the 5th year, we were valued at over $2 billion. By the 8th year, we had gone public, and my personal worth exceeded the combined value of every law firm in New York. Through it all, I maintained my cover. I kept my small apartment for family visits. Though I lived in a penthouse, I drove an old Honda to family functions, while my collection of luxury cars sat in a private garage. I endured their pitying looks while donating more to charity each year than their firm made in profit. Now, staring at their job applications, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Part of me wanted to reject them immediately, to let them feel a fraction of the dismissal they had shown me. But another part saw an opportunity for something more satisfying. "Michael," I said finally, Schedule the interviews. But don't conduct them in the executive suite. Use the small conference room on the 15th floor. He raised an eyebrow. The one we use for junior positions? Exactly. And don't tell them anything about meeting with O.W. Blackwood. Let them think they're interviewing with middle management. After Michael left, I opened my laptop and began researching my siblings' recent careers. Diane had left our father's firm 2 years ago after a failed attempt to modernize their practice. James had bounced between several firms, never quite living up to our father's expectations. Now they both wanted to join the tech world they had once mocked. My phone buzzed. A text from Diane. Hey sis, I just applied to this amazing tech company. Put in a good word if you know anyone there. I smiled at the irony. For 10 years, she had never once asked about my work or shown any interest in tech. Now that she needed something, suddenly my connections mattered. I'll see what I can do, I replied, knowing that tomorrow would change everything. That evening, I stood in my penthouse, watching the sunset paint the city in shades of gold. On my desk sat an old photo from my college graduation, the last time my family had shown any real pride in me. Even then, it was tempered with concern about my impractical career choice. My assistant's voice came through the intercom. Ms. Winters, your siblings' interviews are scheduled for tomorrow at 10 a.m. Your father's law firm pitch is set for 2 p.m. Are you sure about this? I thought about all the family dinners where I sat quietly while they bragged about their legal victories. All the holidays where they treated me like a cautionary tale. All the times they could have supported me, but chose to judge instead. Yes, Michael, I'm sure. Tomorrow, the Winters family will finally learn what real success looks like. I picked up the photo, studying my younger self's hopeful expression. Back then, I had wanted so desperately to prove myself to them. Now, I realized that the person I really needed to prove myself to was me. The next morning, I arrived at the office early, taking my private elevator to the 15th floor. The small conference room had been prepared exactly as I requested. Simple furnishings, no view of the city, nothing to suggest the true power of Blackwood innovations. Through the security feed, I watched my siblings arrive separately in the lobby. Diane wore an expensive suit, her confidence evident in every movement. James looked more nervous, constantly adjusting his tie. They were escorted to the 15th floor, neither of them realizing that their supposedly struggling sister was watching from the executive suite above, about to change their world forever. Through the security monitors, I watched my siblings sit nervously in the small conference room. Diane kept checking her reflection in her compact mirror, while James drummed his fingers on the table. Neither of them had any idea that their lives were about to change completely. Send in the first interviewer, I instructed Michael through my earpiece. Right on cue, Sarah Chen, my chief technology officer, entered the room. I had chosen her specifically because she was young, female, and brilliant. Everything my siblings had dismissed throughout my career. Good morning, Sarah said, sitting down with their resumes. I'm conducting initial interviews for Blackwood Innovations. Let's start with your technical backgrounds. Diane straightened in her chair, adopting the confident pose she perfected in courtrooms. While I don't have direct tech experience, I've overseen several digital transformation projects at law firms. Really? Sarah raised an eyebrow. Could you elaborate on the technical aspects of those projects? I watched Diane flounder, trying to mask her lack of knowledge with legal jargon. James wasn't doing much better, his claims of understanding the tech industry falling apart under Sarah's precise questioning. After 20 excruciating minutes, Sarah thanked them and left. My siblings exchanged worried glances, their confidence visibly shaken. "Send in round 2, I instructed. This time, it was Marcus Rodriguez, my head of innovation. He began asking about their views on emerging technologies, cryptocurrency, and artificial intelligence. Their answers were painfully outdated, filled with buzzwords, but lacking any real understanding. Is this a joke?" Diane finally snapped, her frustration breaking through. "We're here to interview for executive positions, not tech support. Where is Otagu Blackwood? We should be meeting with actual decision makers." Marcus kept his expression neutral, though I could see him fighting back a smile. "Ms. Winters, I assure you this is standard procedure. However, if you prefer to leave—" "No," James cut in quickly. "We apologize. Please continue." 3 more interviewers followed, each one expertly exposing my siblings' lack of qualifications. By the final round, both Diane and James looked thoroughly defeated. "Ms. Winters," Michael's voice came through my earpiece, "your father's team has arrived for the legal services pitch." "Perfect timing," I smiled. "Have them wait in the main conference room. I'll handle this personally." I took my private elevator down to the 15th floor, smoothing my designer suit and checking my reflection. 10 years of hiding my success had led to this moment. The door to the small conference room opened, and I walked in. The look on my siblings' faces was priceless: confusion, then shock, then dawning horror as they realized what was happening. "Olivia?" Diane stammered. "What are you doing here?" "We're in the middle of interviews." "Actually," I said, taking a seat at the head of the table, "you're at the end of your interviews, and they haven't gone well." James leaned forward, his face flushing. "What do you mean?" "How would you know?" "Because I own this company." I cut him off calmly. "I am Otagu Blackwood." The silence that followed was deafening. Diane's mouth opened and closed without sound. James gripped the table edge so hard his knuckles turned white. "That's impossible," Diane finally managed. "You're a freelancer. You work from coffee shops." I laughed, the sound echoing in the small room. "No, Diane. That's just what I let you believe. While you were all pitying my career choices, I was building this." I gestured around us. "Blackwood Innovations, a Fortune 500 company worth more than every law firm in New York combined." But James was struggling to form words. "All these years?" "Yes," I nodded. "All these years, while you mocked my coding nonsense and offered me IT support jobs, I was revolutionizing enterprise software. While you bragged about your legal victories at family dinners, I was closing billion-dollar deals. While you dismissed me as a failure, I became one of the most successful tech entrepreneurs in the world." Diane's face had turned an interesting shade of gray. "Why didn't you tell us?" "Why should I have? When did any of you ever show genuine interest in my work? When did you ever offer support instead of condescension?" I pulled out their resumes, laying them on the table. "And now here you are, applying for jobs at my company. Not because you're qualified. These interviews have proven you're not. But because you heard Blackwood Innovations was the next big thing." "Olivia, please," James started, but I held up my hand. "I'm not finished. Right now, our father is waiting upstairs to pitch his firm's legal services. He has no idea he's about to try to sell to his own daughter, the one he said would never amount to anything in tech." I stood up, smoothing my skirt. "I have a meeting to attend. Michael will show you out. Oh, and don't bother waiting for callbacks about the jobs. You're not qualified." As I reached the door, Diane called out, her voice shaking. "You can't just leave it like this." I turned back, meeting her eyes. "Actually, I can. I spent 10 years letting you all believe what you wanted about me. Now you get to live with the truth. And believe me, this is just the beginning." Walking away from that conference room, I felt lighter than I had in years. But my day wasn't over yet. My father was waiting upstairs, about to experience his own moment of revelation. The best part, he had no idea what was coming. The executive conference room of Blackwood Tower offered a stunning view of Manhattan's skyline. My father, Richard Winters, stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows, his back straight and proud as always. He was surrounded by 3 junior partners from his firm, all of them clutching presentation materials and practicing their best corporate smiles. I watched them through the glass wall for a moment, remembering all the times I'd stood in his office as a child, dreaming of making him proud. Now, standing in my own tower, I realized those dreams had changed. I no longer needed his pride. I had my own. "Miss Blackwood is ready for you," Michael announced, opening the door. My father turned, his practiced smile freezing as I walked in. For a moment, confusion crossed his face, then shock, then disbelief. "Olivia," he stammered, "what are you doing here?" I sat down at the head of the conference table, enjoying the moment. "Hello, Dad. I believe you're here to pitch legal services to Blackwood Innovations." The junior partners exchanged bewildered looks. One of them quickly flipped through his notes, probably wondering if they'd somehow missed this connection in their research. "I don't understand," my father said, still standing. "We have a meeting with LW Blackwood." "Yes," I smiled. "You do. Please, sit down." Realization dawned slowly on his face as he sank into a chair. You're LW Blackwood?" "Yes, founder and CEO of Blackwood Innovations, the company you're so eager to represent." I turned to the junior partners. "I apologize, but this meeting needs to be private. Family matter." They practically ran from the room, leaving me alone with my father. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. He stared at me like he was seeing a stranger. "How?" he finally managed. "How did I build a multi-billion-dollar tech company while you thought I was struggling? Or how did I keep it secret from a family of supposedly brilliant lawyers?" "Both," he whispered. I leaned back in my chair. "I built it the same way I tried to tell you I would, 10 years ago at that dinner. Remember? When you said tech startups were a dime a dozen." He flinched at the memory. "As for keeping it secret," I continued, "that was surprisingly easy. You were all so convinced I was a failure that you never bothered to look closer. Did you know Blackwood Innovations has been featured in Forbes 12 times? That I've been on CNBC? That our IPO was the biggest tech offering of the decade? But your apartment, your car, props," I said simply. "I kept them to maintain the illusion you all preferred, the struggling daughter who couldn't match up to her sibling's success." My father's face had aged 10 years in 10 minutes. "Diane and James, they applied for jobs here." "Yes, they did. They just finished their interviews, in fact. It didn't go well." He straightened in his chair, some of his old authority returning. "Now see here, Olivia. They're your family. Surely you could." "Could what, Dad?" I cut him off. "Give them jobs they're not qualified for. Like you offered me that 8 support position at your firm?" I pulled out his firm's proposal. "Or should I just hire your firm because we're family? Is that how you think business works?" "That's not fair," he protested weakly. No. What's not fair is spending a decade dismissing your daughter's dreams and abilities because they didn't match your narrow definition of success. I stood up, walking to the windows. Look at this building, Dad. Look at what I built while you were telling everyone I was wasting my potential. He joined me at the window, his reflection showing a mix of emotions I'd never seen before: shame, regret, and something that might have been pride. Why tell us now? He asked quietly. Because it was time. Because I'm tired of maintaining the lie. And because I turned to face him. I wanted you all to learn an important lesson about judging people. And have we learned it? A hint of his old sarcasm crept into his voice. I don't know, Dad. Have you? Your children just applied for jobs at a tech company you said would never succeed. Your firm is pitching services to the daughter you said would never amount to anything. What do you think? He was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the city. Finally, he turned to me. I was wrong about you, Olivia. I've been wrong for a very long time. Yes, you have. I walked back to my desk and pressed the intercom. Michael, please show Mr. Winters out and cancel all his firm's future appointments with us. Wait, my father said quickly. You're not even going to consider our proposal. I met his eyes steadily. No, Dad, just like you never really considered my ideas or potential. The difference is, I'm making this decision based on business merit, not personal bias. As he reached the door, he paused. What happens now? With the family? That depends on all of you. I'm done hiding my success, done playing the role of the disappointing daughter. If you want a relationship with me now, it will have to be on different terms. After he left, I sat in my office watching the sunset paint the city in shades of gold. My phone had been buzzing continuously. Messages from my mother, my siblings, even distant relatives who had somehow already heard the news. I opened one from Diane. I'm so sorry. For everything. Can we talk? Then one from James. I understand now why you kept it secret. I wouldn't have trusted us either. Finally, one from my father. You've built something remarkable. Not despite ignoring my advice, but because you had the courage to follow your own path. I'm sorry I couldn't see that sooner. I didn't respond to any of them immediately. Instead, I called Michael in. Cancel my dinner plans, I told him. I need you to set up something else. The next evening, I hosted a family dinner in my penthouse, my real home, not the small apartment I'd used as a cover. They arrived one by one, their eyes wide, as they took in the luxury they'd never known I had. Before we eat, I announced, once they were all seated, I want to make something clear. This dinner isn't about forgiveness or pretending the past didn't happen. It's about moving forward honestly. Can we do that? They nodded, looking appropriately humbled. Good, I smiled. Then let me tell you the real story of how I built Blackwood Innovations. No more secrets, no more hiding, just the truth. As I began my story, I saw something new in their eyes. Not pity, not condescension, but genuine respect. And for the first time in 10 years, I felt completely free. The next morning, I walked into my office wearing success openly. No more pretenses, no more hiding. My family had learned their lesson about underestimating people, and I had learned that sometimes the best revenge isn't proving others wrong, it's proving yourself right. The press got wind of the story, of course. Tech billionaire's secret identity revealed became the headline of the week. But I didn't care anymore. I had spent 10 years building something extraordinary while my family believed I was failing. Now they would spend the rest of their lives knowing that their biggest failure wasn't in business. It was in failing to see the success right in front of them. And that was worth more than any fortune I'd built. I'm Michael Sullivan, and this is the story of how I built something revolutionary, almost lost everything, and then watched justice unfold live in front of 50,000 viewers. 2 years ago, I founded Trust Chain Technologies with nothing but a laptop and an idea that could transform digital privacy forever. The concept was simple but powerful. A blockchain-based identity verification system that could make identity theft impossible while keeping personal data completely private. Most startups begin in garages. Mine started in a small coffee shop in Seattle, where I spent 18 months coding between shifts as a barista. Every spare dollar went into development. Every free moment was spent refining the algorithms that would become the foundation of Secure ID, our flagship product. The breakthrough came during a rainstorm at 3 a.m., when I finally solved the quantum encryption problem that had been haunting me for months. I remember calling my best friend and lead developer, Jenna, her voice groggy with sleep. "It works," I said, watching the successful test results scroll across my screen. "We can actually verify identity without exposing any personal data. Not even we can see it." "Holy shit," she whispered, suddenly wide awake. "We need to protect this now." She was right. I spent the next week documenting everything, time-stamping each development milestone on multiple blockchain networks. It wasn't paranoia. In tech, your ideas are only yours if you can prove it. That's when Victor Stone entered the picture. Stone Ventures had a reputation for turning promising startups into billion-dollar companies. When Victor's office called requesting a meeting, it felt like winning the lottery. I spent 3 days preparing the pitch, making sure every detail was perfect. The meeting went better than I could have imagined. Victor immediately grasped the potential of Secure ID. "This could be bigger than anything in the digital identity space," he said, studying our prototype demo. "How much have you raised so far?" "Nothing," I admitted. "Been bootstrapping." He smiled, sliding a term sheet across the table. "Let's change that. 10 million, 25% equity stake. We'll take 2 board seats." The terms were fair, almost generous. I should have wondered why. For 6 months, everything was perfect. The investment allowed us to hire top talent, rent proper offices, and accelerate development. Victor became more than an investor. He was a mentor, guiding us through the complex world of Silicon Valley politics. "You're sitting on a gold mine, Mike," he'd say during our weekly meetings. "But timing is everything. We need to control the narrative." I didn't realize he meant that literally. The problem started when we prepared for beta testing. Victor insisted on using his development team for the final security audit. "Standard procedure," he'd assured me. "All our portfolio companies do it." But Jenna found something odd in the audit team's code commits. They weren't just reviewing. They were mapping our entire system architecture, documenting every component in unusual detail. "They're not auditing," she said, showing me the logs. "They're studying it, like they're planning to rebuild it from scratch." I confronted Victor during our next board meeting. His friendly mentor mask slipped for just a moment, revealing something cold underneath. "You're being paranoid, Mike," he said smoothly. "This is how professional companies operate. Unless you don't trust us." The threat was subtle but clear. Cross us, and the funding stops. I backed off, but started taking precautions. Every night, I backed up our development logs to private blockchain nodes. Every code commit, every system change, every email, all encrypted and time-stamped where no one could alter them. Then came the day that revealed Victor's true plan. "We're restructuring the company," he'd announced during an emergency board meeting. "The current leadership structure isn't optimal for our growth plans." The other board members, all Victor's people, nodded in agreement. Effective immediately, we're appointing a new CEO. "Mike, you'll transition to a technical advisory role. Non-voting, of course. My own company, my own creation." They were taking it all. "You can't do this," I started, but Victor cut me off. "Actually, we can. Check your investment documents again. Carefully, this time. Hidden clauses, triggered by specific conditions that Victor had carefully orchestrated over the past 6 months. They hadn't just planned this. They'd been positioning for it since day one. "Don't fight this, Mike," Victor said later in his office. "You're a smart kid, but you're in our world now. If you try to challenge us, you'll never work in tech again. Take the advisory role. Golden handcuffs aren't so bad." I stood there, mind racing through options. They had the legal right to remove me. Victor had made sure of that. They had the connections to blacklist me if I fought back. They even had access to our entire code base. But they didn't have everything. "Okay," I said quietly. "You win. I'll send my resignation letter tonight." Victor smiled, already dismissing me from his mind. "Smart choice. We'll announce the transition at next month's product launch. The live stream's already scheduled. Might as well make it a real show." As I walked out of his office, my phone buzzed. A message from Jenna. "Tell me you have a plan." I did. Victor wanted to make the product launch a show. I'd give him one he'd never forget. What he didn't know was that security had a special feature, one that wasn't in any documentation. One that would activate the moment they tried to erase me from my own creation. In exactly 30 days, during their elaborate live stream launch, they would learn why you should never trust a blockchain developer who smiles while being fired. The first thing Victor did after forcing me out was assign his team to audit all of SecureID's code. I watched through my private access nodes as they combed through every line, methodically documenting my work while trying to understand its core architecture. "They're making changes," Jenna reported via our encrypted channel. She kept her position as lead developer, becoming our eyes and side. "Trying to remove your digital fingerprints from the codebase." I smiled, watching their commits appear in my monitoring system. Let them. Each change only makes the proof stronger. What Victor and his team didn't understand was the true nature of blockchain technology. You can't just erase history. Every change, every modification creates an immutable record. And I had built something far more sophisticated than simple transaction logs. From my new home office, a rented workspace paid for in crypto to avoid detection, I monitored their progress. 3 separate screens displayed different aspects of my counter strategy. Screen 1. The official trust chain repository where Victor's team worked to modify SecureID. Screen 2. My private blockchain nodes, recording every change they made. Screen 3. The real system, the one they hadn't found. "They've scheduled a major press event," Jenna messaged. "Victor's going all out. Live stream, tech journalists, even some government officials interested in digital identity protection." Perfect. The bigger the audience, the better. 2 weeks after my resignation, Victor's team made their first major mistake. They tried to modify the core verification protocol, not realizing it was just a front end for the actual system. Getting error messages, Jenna reported. Their changes aren't propagating correctly through the blockchain. Of course they weren't. The real verification system was distributed across thousands of nodes, each containing fragments of my original code. Every attempt to centralize control only strengthened its decentralized nature. Then came an unexpected ally. Maria from the legal team reached out to a secure channel. "I've been documenting everything," she wrote. "The hidden clauses, the orchestrated violations, the planned takeover. It's all timestamped and stored offline." I thanked her but warned her to stay quiet. Victory would require perfect timing. 3 weeks in, Victor started getting nervous. The launch date was approaching, but security wasn't behaving as expected. Small glitches appeared in testing, nothing major, but enough to worry someone claiming to have built the system. "Mike," his email read, "perhaps we were hasty. Would you consider a consulting role? Your technical insights could be valuable." I didn't respond. A few days later, another email arrived offering a generous compensation package in exchange for my help preparing for the launch. The desperation was showing. They couldn't understand why parts of the system remained opaque to them. "They're working weekends now," Jenna reported. "Victor's getting paranoid. Keeps talking about unexpected behaviors in the verification protocols. He should be worried. Every change they made to try controlling the system only increased its autonomy. Like antibodies recognizing an invasion, the blockchain was learning, adapting, preparing for the moment of revelation." 1 week before the launch, I received an urgent message from David, our former head of cybersecurity, who'd quit in protest after my removal. "You need to see this," he wrote, attaching internal emails. "They're planning to announce a revolutionary breakthrough in blockchain security, taking full credit for your quantum encryption protocols." I checked my countdown timer. 7 days until the live stream. 7 days until SecurID showed everyone its true capabilities. The final week was tense. Victor's team worked around the clock, trying to patch irregularities they'd created with their modifications. Each fix only made things worse, though they didn't understand why. The rehearsal was a disaster. Jenna reported 2 days before launch. Random identity verification failures. System kept referencing original protocols they can't find. Victor made one final attempt to reach me, this time through my old mentor from NIT. "Whatever you're planning, it's not worth destroying your career over. Take the settlement. Walk away." I sent a simple reply, looking forward to the live stream. The night before the launch, I checked my systems one last time. Everything was in place. Blockchain nodes, primed and synchronized. Proof of ownership, distributed and verified. Original development logs, timestamped and immutable. Victor's team's modifications, all documented and traced. "You sure about this?" Jenna messaged. "Once it starts, no stopping it." I finished. But that's the point of blockchain, isn't it? Immutable truth. I went to bed that night feeling strangely peaceful. Tomorrow, in front of thousands of live viewers and every major tech journalist, Victor Stone would learn the true meaning of decentralized control. My phone buzzed one last time. A message from Maria in legal. All evidence secured and backed up. Tomorrow will be interesting. Indeed it would. Victor wanted to make the product launch a show. He had no idea he'd be starring in a demonstration of blockchain's real power, the power to make truth unstoppable. The morning of the live stream, Trust Chain's homepage already showed over 40,000 people waiting for the event. Victor had marketed it perfectly. The future of digital identity was trending on every tech platform. I watched from my workspace as the stream began. Victor took the stage in a black turtleneck, clearly channeling his inner Steve Jobs. The camera work was professional, the staging immaculate. Behind him, massive screens displayed SecureID's interface. "Today," Victor began, "we revolutionized digital security forever." I checked my monitors. The blockchain nodes were synchronized, verification protocols running exactly as designed. Everything was ready. "For too long," Victor continued, "we've accepted the compromise between security and privacy. Today, Trust Chain Technologies ends that compromise." The irony of him talking about trust wasn't lost on the thousands watching. Soon, they'd understand just how much. "Let me demonstrate," Victor said, moving to a terminal. "We've developed a quantum encryption system that makes identity theft impossible." I watched the viewer count climb past 50,000. Perfect timing. The first sign that something was wrong came when Victor tried to initiate the demonstration. The system responded differently than in rehearsal. Verifying system integrity, SecureID announced, its AI voice echoing through the auditorium. Detecting unauthorized modifications to core protocols. Victor's smile flickered. This wasn't part of the script. Initiating blockchain verification sequence, the system continued. Analyzing ownership records. The massive screens behind Victor shifted, displaying a real-time blockchain explorer. Thousands of nodes lit up, each containing fragments of SecureID's true history. "What you're witnessing," the AI explained to the stunned audience, "is a demonstration of immutable proof of ownership and development history." Victor tried to interrupt, but his terminal access was already locked. On screen, the blockchain explorer showed transaction after transaction, each time-stamped and verified. Original concept documentation. Development milestones. Code commits. Even Victor's emails planning the takeover. Quantum encryption breakthrough attributed to Victor Stone, the AI announced. Verifying claim. Claim invalidated. Displaying original development records. The screens filled with my early work. Time-stamped proofs from 18 months before I had ever met Victor, showing the evolution of the encryption protocol. System detecting attempted unauthorized transfer of intellectual property rights, the AI continued. Initiating truth verification protocols. That's when the real show began. Every screen in the auditorium started displaying evidence, the hidden contract clauses, the orchestrated violations, the carefully planned theft of my company. All preserved immutably on the blockchain, impossible to deny or erase. "This is a malfunction," Victor tried, his voice strained. "A disgruntled ex-employee's sabotage." "Incorrect," the AI interrupted. "This is SecureID functioning exactly as designed, protecting digital identity and ownership through immutable proof." The viewer count had passed 60,000. In the comment stream, tech journalists were already posting about the unprecedented live exposure of corporate theft. Displaying development team structure, the AI announced. The screens showed an organizational chart revealing how Victor's team had been mapping and trying to replicate SecureID's architecture. "Would you like to see their attempts to modify the core protocols?" the AI asked pleasantly. The screens filled with side-by-side comparisons. My original, elegant code versus their clumsy attempts to claim it. That's when I made my entrance. Walking onto the stage, I took position at a second terminal. "Perhaps I can help explain," I said, my voice carrying through the auditorium speakers. "You see, SecureID isn't just a security system. It's a demonstration of blockchain's true power, the power to make truth immutable. The audience was silent, cameras swinging between Victor's paling face and my calm demeanor. Every change your team made, I continued, typing commands that displayed more evidence. Every attempt to erase my work only strengthened the proof of original ownership. That's the beauty of blockchain. You can't change history without leaving evidence. This is illegal, Victor sputtered. You'll never work in tech again? I finished. Actually, according to these ownership records, verified across thousands of nodes, I still own 51% of Trust Chain's intellectual property. Your attempted hostile takeover triggered an automatic blockchain-based reversion of rights. On screen, legal documents appeared showing exactly that. Maria from legal had done her work well. Ladies and gentlemen, I addressed the now massive online audience. You came to see a demonstration of unbreakable digital identity protection. Instead, you witnessed something more valuable, proof that in the blockchain era, truth cannot be stolen, erased, or controlled by anyone. The next hours were a blur. Victor was escorted out by security. The board convened an emergency session. By evening, major tech news outlets were running stories about how blockchain technology had exposed and prevented corporate theft in real time. 1 year later, Trust Chain is thriving under my leadership. Secure ID has become the industry standard for digital identity protection, trusted because we proved its integrity in the most dramatic way possible. Victor? He's facing SEC investigations and multiple lawsuits. Turns out we weren't the first startup he tried to steal, just the first with immutable proof. Sometimes late at night, working on new protocols, I think about that live stream. About Victor's face when he realized what was happening. He thought he was stealing a security system. But what he really did was trigger the most sophisticated truth verification protocol ever created. The irony? If he'd been honest, I would have happily collaborated with him. But he chose deception, forgetting the fundamental nature of blockchain. In a decentralized world, truth will always find its way to the surface. These days, whenever I speak at tech conferences, someone always asks about that live stream. They want to know if I planned it all along. I just smile and tell them what I've learned. In the age of blockchain, the best defense isn't just code. It's creating systems where truth is truly unstoppable. Because sometimes, the quiet developer isn't just building a product. Sometimes, they're building justice itself, one block at a time. I never planned to reveal my success at my brother Marcus's wedding. For years, I'd kept my true position hidden from my family, letting them believe I worked at a tiny consulting firm while I secretly built an empire. But Marcus's cruel words that day changed everything. Standing in the opulent ballroom of the Grand Plaza Hotel, I smoothed down my simple navy dress, deliberately chosen to be understated. Around me, crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over elaborately decorated tables while waiters circulated with champagne. This was exactly the kind of ostentatious display Marcus loved, a chance to show off his supposed success to everyone. Sophie. My mother's voice cut through my thoughts. There you are. Why aren't you mingling? Everyone's asking about you. Her eyes swept critically over my dress, her lips pursing slightly. Though I suppose there's not much to tell. I took a slow sip of champagne, thinking about the board meeting I'd led just yesterday, where we'd finalized the acquisition of our biggest competitor. I'm doing fine, Mom. The consulting work keeps me busy. She sighed dramatically. Busy isn't the same as successful, dear. Look at your brother, youngest VP in Sterling Industries history, about to marry the CEO's daughter. That's what real success looks like. I bit back a smile. knowing that Sterling Industries had been struggling lately. In fact, they'd been desperately trying to arrange a meeting with my company's CEO. Me, for months. But of course, my family didn't know that. They didn't know that the tiny consulting firm I supposedly worked for was actually Aurora Consulting Group, one of the largest business advisory firms in the country. And they certainly didn't know that I wasn't just an employee. I was the founder and CEO. Sophie. Marcus's booming voice interrupted my thoughts. He strode over, champagne in hand, his new bride Jessica clutching his arm. Still hiding in corners at parties? Some things never change. Jessica giggled, adjusting her designer dress. Oh, Marcus told me all about your little consulting job. It's so cute that you're trying to make it on your own. I watched them, remembering how different things had been 15 years ago. Back then, Marcus had been the struggling one, barely passing his classes while I graduated top of my class. But then Dad had stepped in, using his connections to get Marcus an entry-level position at Sterling Industries. Meanwhile, I was told to be realistic about my ambitions. Someone has to do the small jobs, Marcus continued, his voice carrying just enough for nearby guests to hear. Poor sis, still working at that tiny firm while the rest of us are making real careers. But hey, at least you can say you're independent, right? Jessica laughed again, a sharp sound like breaking glass. Oh, darling, be nice. Not everyone can be as successful as you. I felt the weight of the antique locket around my neck, my grandmother's final gift to me before she passed. She had been the only one who believed in me, who supported my dreams with more than just empty words. Success comes in many forms, Marcus, I said quietly. Sure, sure. He waved his hand dismissively. Speaking of success, did you hear? Sterling's CEO is actually coming to the wedding reception tonight. Mr. Harrison himself. He never attends employee events, but for me, he puffed up with pride. I knew exactly why James Harrison was attending. He wanted to discuss the potential buyout of Sterling Industries, a discussion he'd been trying to have with me for weeks. I'd been deliberately delaying, wanting to see how desperate they'd become. That's wonderful, I murmured, hiding my smile behind my champagne glass. Try not to embarrass me when he arrives, Marcus added. Just stay in the background. This is important for my career. Before I could respond, a sudden hush fell over the room. James Harrison had arrived, his commanding presence drawing all eyes. He was exactly as I remember from our video calls, tall, distinguished, with steel-gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. Marcus immediately straightened, tugging Jessica along as he prepared to greet his CEO. But before he could take 2 steps, Harrison's eyes landed on me, and his face lit up with recognition. Miss Mitchell, he called out, striding purposefully in my direction. I had no idea you'd be here. Marcus froze mid-step, confusion written across his face. Jessica's perfectly plucked eyebrows drew together in bewilderment. Mom, Harrison continued as he reached me, extending his hand respectfully. We've been trying to arrange a meeting for weeks. I didn't expect to run into you at an employee's wedding. I could feel Marcus's eyes boring into me as I shook Harrison's hand. Hello, James. Surprised to see me here. Why wouldn't I be? It's not every day you run into the CEO of Aurora Consulting at a company wedding. He glanced at Marcus, then back to me. Realization dawning in his eyes. Unless... Wait, is Marcus my brother? I confirmed, allowing myself a small smile as I watched the color drain from Marcus's face. Though he didn't know about my position until just now. The silence that followed was deafening. I could see my mother's hand trembling as she clutched her champagne glass, my father's jaw hanging open in shock. But it was Marcus's expression that truly captured the moment, a mixture of disbelief, embarrassment, and dawning horror as he realized he just spent the last hour mocking his boss's boss's boss. James Harrison looked between us, clearly trying to process this revelation. Your brother? But he said his sister worked at a small local consulting firm. That's what they all thought, I said, my voice carrying clearly in the stunned silence. I never corrected them. Jessica's wine glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on the marble floor. The sound seemed to break the spell of silence, and suddenly everyone was talking at once. But I kept my eyes on Marcus, watching as his carefully constructed world of superiority crumbled around him. This wasn't how I planned to reveal my success, but as I stood there, watching my family's perception of me shatter like Jessica's wine glass, I realized that sometimes the best moments in life are the unplanned ones. And this moment? This was just the beginning. The next few minutes at the wedding reception felt like a carefully choreographed dance of chaos. My mother, always obsessed with appearances, tried desperately to salvage the situation. Sophie, darling, she gushed, suddenly appearing at my side. Why didn't you tell us about your position? I took another sip of champagne, savoring the moment. You never asked, Mom. You were all too busy celebrating Marcus's achievements to care about my little consulting job. James Harrison was still standing nearby, looking both amused and uncomfortable. Ms. Mitchell, I had no idea this was a family event for you. Perhaps we could discuss the merger. Merger? Marcus interrupted, his face shifting from shock to panic. He grabbed my arm, fingers digging in painfully. What merger? I carefully removed his hand, keeping my voice level. The one where Aurora Consulting is considering buying Sterling Industries. I turned to Harrison. Though after tonight, I'm having second thoughts about the acquisition. Marcus went pale. Jessica, his new bride, looked like she might faint. But that would make you your boss. I finished for him. Yes, it would. Interesting how life works out, isn't it? My father finally found his voice, pushing through the crowd that had gathered around us. Now wait just a minute, he blustered, his face red. You can't just come here and ruin your brother's wedding with these claims. Harrison cleared his throat. I assure you, sir, your daughter is exactly who she says she is. Aurora Consulting is the largest business advisory firm in the country, and Ms. Mitchell founded it from the ground up. We've been trying to arrange this merger for months. I watched my father's face as the truth sank in. This was the man who had told me 10 years ago that I was dreaming too big when I said I wanted to start my own company. The man who had used every connection he had to help Marcus climb the corporate ladder while telling me to be realistic about my goals. But the money, my mother stammered. All those times you said you couldn't help with family expenses. Oh, you mean like the $50,000 you borrowed from my savings for Marcus's MBA? I kept my voice calm, but I could feel years of resentment bubbling up. The money you never paid back because, and I quote, Marcus needs it more for his future. Jessica stepped forward, her wedding dress rustling. Marcus, darling, did you know about this? About her company? Of course not, he snapped, then tried to compose himself. Sophie's she's always been jealous of my success. This must be some kind of mistake. Harrison raised an eyebrow. The only mistake, Mr. Mitchell, was apparently your understanding of your sister's position in the business world. Aurora Consulting's annual revenue is more than Sterling Industries has made in the past 5 years combined. The ballroom had gone completely silent. Every guest was watching our family drama unfold like it was a live theater production. Marcus's perfect wedding was quickly becoming the talk of the corporate world, but not for the reasons he'd hoped. I think, I said quietly, we should continue this discussion somewhere more private. I nodded to Harrison. James, would you mind giving me a moment with my family? He nodded graciously and stepped away. I led my family to a private room off the main ballroom, closing the door behind us. The silence was deafening. How dare you? Marcus finally exploded. This is my wedding day. You couldn't just let me have this one thing. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. One thing? You've had everything handed to you your entire life. Dad's connections got you into Sterling. Mom's jewelry paid for your MBA. My savings funded your startup attempts. Meanwhile, I'd built something real, something lasting, completely on my own. We were trying to protect you, my mother insisted, wringing her hands. The business world is so cruel to women. No, Mom. You weren't protecting me. You were dismissing me. Every achievement, every milestone, you brushed them all aside because they didn't fit your narrative of who I should be. My father stepped forward, his business instincts finally kicking in. Now, Sophie, let's be reasonable. We're family. Surely we can work something out that benefits everyone. You mean now that you know I'm successful, you want to be part of it? I shook my head. The merger with Sterling was a courtesy to Harrison. He's a good CEO dealing with a bad board. But after tonight, I met Marcus's eyes. I think it's time for some changes. You can't do this, Marcus whispered, his arrogance finally cracking. My position, my future. Your position was always built on sand, Marcus. You've lost 3 major clients this year alone. The only reason you still have a job is because of your connection to Jessica's family. I straightened my simple navy dress. But don't worry. When Aurora acquires Sterling, we'll find a position suited to your actual qualifications. Jessica let out a small sob. My father won't let this happen. He's on the board. Your father, I said gently, called me last week to make sure the merger goes through. Sterling Industries is drowning in debt, and Aurora Consulting is their only lifeline. The gravity of the situation finally seemed to hit Marcus. His legs gave out, and he sank into a nearby chair. All this time, while we were mocking you, you were building an empire? I tried to tell you, all of you, so many times, but you never listened. You were too busy planning Marcus's next promotion, too focused on maintaining the perfect family image. I moved toward the door. Well, now you know the truth, and things are going to change. Sophie, please, my mother called out as I reached for the handle. We're still family. I paused, my hand on the door. Family? I turned back to face them. Family supports each other. Family listens. Family doesn't mock and dismiss and tear down. You weren't family when I was struggling. You don't get to claim family now that I'm successful. With that, I opened the door and walked back into the ballroom, leaving them to process the new reality of our family dynamic. Harrison was waiting for me near the bar, a knowing look in his eyes. Shall we discuss the merger terms, Ms. Mitchell? He asked quietly. I nodded, a small smile playing at my lips. Yes, James. I think it's time to reshape Sterling Industries, starting with the management structure. As we walked away to discuss business, I could feel my family's eyes on my back. The simple navy dress I'd chosen to seem understated now felt like armor. They had spent years underestimating me, dismissing my achievements, treating me like the family disappointment. But now they knew exactly who I was. And this was just the beginning of their education. The weeks following Marcus's wedding were exactly what I expected: a hurricane of family drama, desperate attempts at reconciliation, and not-so-subtle manipulation. My phone buzzed constantly with messages. "Sophie, darling, let's discuss this like family." "Mom, your brother is devastated. How could you do this to him?" "Dad, we need to talk about my position at Sterling." "Marcus, my father wants to meet with you." "Jessica." I ignored them all. I had a merger to complete. The morning of the Sterling Industries board meeting, I stood in my office on the top floor of Aurora Consulting's headquarters, adjusting my suit jacket. This wasn't the simple navy dress from the wedding. Today, I wore a tailored black Armani suit that screamed power and authority. No more hiding. My assistant Emma knocked on the door. "Your brother is here again, Ms. Mitchell. Third time this week." I sighed, checking my watch. "Send him in. Might as well deal with this before the board meeting." Marcus walked in, looking disheveled, a far cry from his usual polished appearance. His designer suit was wrinkled, his tie slightly askew. "Sophie, please. You have to listen to me." "I'm listening," I said, sitting behind my desk. "Though I'm not sure what's left to say after your 20 voicemails and 37 texts." He ran a hand through his hair. "Look, I know I was awful at the wedding. I know I've been dismissive of your work. But you can't just take over Sterling Industries. My whole life is there." "Your whole life," I repeated slowly, "was handed to you. Every opportunity, every promotion, every success, it was all arranged by Dad or bought with someone else's money, usually mine. That's not fair. Not fair." I stood up, placing both hands on my desk. "What's not fair was using my savings for your MBA, without asking. What's not fair was mocking my tiny firm while I built an empire. What's not fair was treating me like a failure while I succeeded beyond anything you could imagine." "I'm sorry," he whispered, and for the first time, I thought he might actually mean it. "Sorry doesn't change the past, Marcus, and it doesn't change what's about to happen." I checked my watch again. "The board meeting starts in an hour. I suggest you prepare yourself." "What's going to happen to me?" I sat back down, studying him. "That depends on you. Aurora Consulting rewards competence, not connections. If you want to keep a position at Sterling after the merger, you'll have to earn it. Actually earn it." His face paled. "You mean?" "Starting from the bottom. Learning the business properly. No shortcuts, no special treatment." I held up a hand as he started to protest. "It's that or severance. Your choice." Just then, my office door opened again. This time, it was my parents, barging in despite Emma's protests. "Sophie," my mother started, her voice quivering. "We've been trying to reach you for weeks." "I've been busy," I replied coolly. "Running my tiny firm takes a lot of work." My father stepped forward, his face set in what I recognized as his negotiation expression. "Honey, we need to talk about this rationally. You can't just destroy your brother's career over some past misunderstandings." "Misunderstandings?" I laughed. "Is that what we're calling years of dismissal and disrespect now?" "We made mistakes," my mother admitted, wringing her hands. "But we're family. Surely that counts for something." I opened my desk drawer and pulled out an old photo, the last family portrait we'd taken before I started Aurora Consulting. In it, I stood slightly apart from the others, wearing a simple dress while they were all in designer clothes. Even then, I was an outsider in my own family. Family counted for something when I needed support starting my business. It counted when I was working 18-hour days building my company. It counted all those times you chose to celebrate Marcus's minor promotions while ignoring my major achievements. I set the photo down. But now it's just business. A knock at my door interrupted us. Emma poked her head in. "Ms. Mitchell? The board is gathering." I stood up, straightening my jacket. "Thank you, Emma. I'll be right there." I turned to my family. "You're welcome to stay and watch the meeting on the monitors in the waiting area. I think it'll be educational." The Sterling Industries boardroom fell silent as I walked in. 15 pairs of eyes followed me to the head of the table, where James Harrison stood to greet me. "Ms. Mitchell, thank you for joining us. Shall we begin?" The next hour was a masterclass in corporate restructuring. I laid out Aurora's plans for Sterling, department by department, position by position. By the end, several board members were nodding appreciatively while others looked shell-shocked. And finally, I concluded, we'll be implementing a complete overhaul of the management structure. No more positions based on connections rather than competence. Through the glass walls, I could see my family watching from the waiting area. Marcus had sunk into a chair, his head in his hands. My parents stood rigid, finally understanding the full scope of my power. After the meeting, Harrison approached me. "Brilliant presentation, as always. Though I have to ask, your brother's position will be handled fairly," I assured him. "If he's willing to work for it, there's a place for him, starting in entry-level sales." Harrison nodded approvingly. "You're more generous than many would be in your position." "This isn't about revenge," I said, gathering my papers. "It's about building something lasting, something real." When I walked out to the waiting area, my family was still there. They looked different now, smaller somehow, less intimidating than they'd seemed all those years ago. "So that's it?" Marcus asked quietly. "Everything changes just like that." "Everything changed years ago, Marcus. You just didn't notice because you were too busy looking down on me." I turned to my parents. "The company will be sending over new employment contracts tomorrow. I suggest you all read them carefully." "Sophie," my mother stepped forward, tears in her eyes. "We were wrong about you. So wrong. Can't we start over?" I thought about all the dinners where they'd ignored my achievements, all the family events where they treated me like an afterthought, all the times they'd prioritized Marcus's ambitions over my dreams. "Starting over would mean forgetting the past," I said finally, "and I don't want to forget. Those years of dismissal and disrespect taught me valuable lessons about self-reliance and determination. They made me who I am." "And who are you?" my father asked softly. "I'm the woman who built a billion-dollar company while you were all too busy mocking her tiny firm to notice. I'm the CEO who just acquired the company you thought was the pinnacle of success. And I'm the daughter who finally stopped seeking your approval and found her own path instead." I started walking toward the elevator, then paused and looked back. "The contracts will be here tomorrow. Your choice whether to sign them or not. But either way, things will never go back to how they were." As the elevator doors closed, I caught one last glimpse of my family, standing there in the waiting room of the company I built, finally seeing me clearly for the first time. That night, in my penthouse office, I took out my grandmother's locket, the one piece of family history I truly cherished. Inside was a small note she'd written years ago, Success isn't about who believes in you at the end. It's about believing in yourself from the beginning. I smiled, thinking about how far I'd come from that overlooked daughter in the family portrait. Marcus's wedding had just been the beginning. Now everyone knew exactly who I was. Not the family disappointment, but the force that had reshaped their entire world. And somehow, that felt better than any revenge could have. Success has a funny way of rewriting history. People forget the struggles, the sleepless nights, the sacrifices. They see the end result and call it luck. I learned this lesson the hard way at our annual Taylor family reunion. My name is Marcus Taylor, and 15 years ago, I made a choice that would change everything. Back then, I was just the quiet middle child, the one nobody expected much from. My older brother David was the business genius, and my younger sister Kate was the gifted one. Me? I was just Marcus, the reliable one who helped out at our parents' struggling electronics store. That store, Taylor Electronics, was my father's pride and joy. He'd opened it 30 years ago with nothing but a small loan and big dreams. By the time I started working there at 18, it was barely staying afloat. The rise of big box retailers and online shopping had hit us hard, but Dad refused to change, clinging to his old ways of doing business. I still remember that Sunday morning in 2009 when everything changed. The store was empty, as usual. Dad sat at his desk, surrounded by past due notices and unpaid bills. David, fresh from his MBA program, was lecturing him about business fundamentals and market dynamics. "You need to liquidate," David declared, waving his hands dramatically. "Cut your losses before it's too late. I can help you negotiate a decent sale price for the inventory." Mom nodded along, always impressed by David's business jargon. Kate was too busy texting to pay attention. And me? I was in the back room, working on something that would either save or destroy our family legacy. For months, I'd been developing a new inventory management system. Not just any system, one that could predict trends, optimize pricing, and integrate seamlessly with online marketplaces. I taught myself programming during night classes at the community college, spending every free moment coding and testing. Actually, I spoke up, my voice steadier than I felt. "I have another idea." David's laugh cut through the air like a knife. "Oh, this should be good. What's your brilliant plan, little brother?" "More clearance sales." I connected my laptop to the store's ancient TV, pulling up my presentation. "We don't need to sell. We need to evolve. Look at this." For the next 20 minutes, I explained my vision. Transforming our single struggling store into a hybrid model, combining brick and mortar service with an advanced online platform. My software would be the backbone, handling everything from inventory to customer relationships. "This is nonsense," David scoffed. "You need millions to build something like that. Besides, what do you know about e-commerce? You're just a store clerk." Dad looked torn. He'd always trusted David's business instincts, but something in my presentation had caught his attention. "How much would this cost to implement?" $200,000 to start, I said quietly. "I've run the numbers. With our current assets and a small business loan." "Absolutely not." David slammed his hand on the desk. "Dad, this is crazy. You'll lose everything. Let me handle this. I know people who might be interested in buying the property." That's when I made the offer that would change everything. "I'll buy the store." The room went silent. Then David started laughing. "With what money?" "Your savings from stocking shelves." "I have some savings," I said, "and I'll take full responsibility for the loans." All I need is for everyone to sign over their shares to me. Our parents had divided ownership of the store between the three of us kids years ago, hoping we'd all stay involved in the family business. Each of us held 20%, with Mom and Dad keeping 40% between them. You can't be serious. Kate finally looked up from her phone. This place is worthless. Then you shouldn't mind signing it over, I replied. I'll even pay each of you $5,000 for your shares. That's more than they're worth right now. David's eyes narrowed. He was always quick to spot an angle. What's the catch? No catch. Just one condition. You sign a non-compete agreement. For 15 years, none of you can start or work for any competing business in our market. 15 years. David laughed. You're delusional. Who'd agree to that? People who think this business is worthless, I said quietly. People who believe I'm going to fail anyway. After all, it's just luck if I succeed, right? I pulled out the contracts I'd had prepared. Simple, straightforward documents transferring their shares to me and binding them to the non-compete agreement. I'd spent my last $1,000 on getting them legally drafted. This is ridiculous, David declared, but I could see the wheels turning in his head. $5,000 for worthless shares in a failing business. Plus, in his mind, the non-compete was meaningless because there was no way I could succeed. Kate signed first, barely reading the document. Whatever. I need a new phone anyway. Mom and Dad exchanged looks. They'd been trying to figure out how to retire, and this offered them a way out. They signed next. David held out the longest, lecturing me about business realities and market forces. But in the end, his belief in my inevitable failure and his need to prove himself right won out. He signed with a flourish. Congratulations, he smirked. You just bought yourself a sinking ship. I gathered the signed contracts carefully, treating them like the precious documents they were. Maybe I just bought our family's future. The next few years were a blur of 18-hour days, endless code revisions, and countless setbacks. I moved into the store's back office, sleeping on an old couch to save money. Every dollar went into building the business. My software evolved from a simple inventory system into something more powerful. It could predict market trends, optimize pricing in real time, and create personalized shopping experiences. Major retailers started noticing our unusually high efficiency rates. By year 5, we had expanded to 10 locations, each running on my system. By year 10, we had licensed the software to hundreds of retailers across the country. Taylor Electronics had transformed from a dying local store into Taylor Tech Solutions, a multi-million-dollar retail technology company. Through it all, my family stayed away, convinced my success was just a string of lucky breaks. David started and failed at several ventures, always blaming market conditions or bad timing. Kate drifted between jobs, never finding her passion. Mom and Dad retired comfortably on the money I sent them, though they still credited David as their business advisor. Which brings us to last week's family reunion, held at my new lake house. 15 years almost to the day since they signed those contracts. David had been drinking, his bitterness amplified by the obvious signs of my success. The lake house, the cars in the driveway, the subtle but clear indicators of wealth that he'd always dreamed of achieving. You just got lucky, he shouted, gesturing wildly with his wine glass. All of this, it's just dumb luck. Real business takes skill, strategy, education, not some homemade computer program. The room fell silent. Other family members, aunts, uncles, cousins who'd witnessed our history, shifted uncomfortably. I could have let it go, could have smiled and nodded as I had for years, but 15 years is a long time to wait for a moment. I walked to my home office, opened my safe, and returned with a yellowed document. Remember this contract you signed 15 years ago? The non-compete agreement? David's face went white. Kate stopped scrolling on her phone. Mom and Dad exchanged worried looks. What about it? David's voice had lost its edge. Well, I said, settling into my chair, there's something about that contract I never told you. Something that makes tomorrow a very interesting day for all of us. The non-compete agreement expires tomorrow, I said calmly, watching David's face. But that's not the interesting part. David tried to maintain his composure, but I could see the slight tremor in his hand as he set down his wine glass. 15 years of bitterness and resentment had led to this moment. The interesting part, I continued, is Section 7, Paragraph 3, the clause none of you bothered to read before signing. I opened the document, its pages soft with age. Would you like me to read it? Kate had finally put down her phone, her carefully maintained indifference cracking. Mom and Dad sat frozen on the expensive sofa they'd criticized as wastefully extravagant just hours earlier. This is ridiculous. David attempted his usual bluster. Some old contract from when you bought that worthless store. Who cares? I smiled, remembering all the times he dismissed me, mocked my efforts, attributed every success to luck, rather than admit he might have been wrong. Section 7, Paragraph 3. I read clearly, my voice carrying across the now silent room. In exchange for the transfer of shares and acceptance of the non-compete agreement, all signatories agree to forfeit any claim to intellectual property, patents, or technological innovations developed by Marcus Taylor during the period of this agreement. The color drained from David's face. He'd been a business major. He understood exactly what those words meant. Furthermore, I continued, all signatories acknowledge that any such developments, including but not limited to software systems, algorithms, and business processes, remain the sole property of Marcus Taylor in perpetuity. That's standard legal language, David stammered. Meaningless boilerplate. I pulled out another document, this one crisp and new. This is a valuation report from Goldman Sachs. They estimate the current market value of Taylor Tech's proprietary software system at approximately $2.8 billion. The room erupted in chaos. Aunt Susan dropped her cocktail glass. Uncle Pete started choking on his appetizer. Kate's perfectly manicured hands began shaking. But that's not the real bombshell, I said, pulling out a third document. This morning, I received an offer. Amazon wants to acquire Taylor Tech Solutions. Their initial offer? $4.7 billion. Mom grabbed Dad's arm. David collapsed into a chair. Kate started frantically Googling on her phone. You can't. David's voice cracked. We're family. We owned the original business together. No, I corrected him. You sold your shares. All of you. You signed away your rights to everything I would build, convinced I would fail. You bet against me, David. Against your own brother. We didn't know. Kate burst out. How could we know you create something so valuable? You couldn't, I agreed. Just like I couldn't know for sure I would succeed. But here's the difference. I believed in myself, even when none of you did. I walked to the bar and poured myself a scotch, letting the moment sink in. 15 years of dismissive comments, mocking laughter, and condescending advice played through my mind. The acquisition goes public tomorrow morning, I continued. I wanted you to hear it from me first. After all, we're family." David jumped up, his face red. "This isn't fair. We'll contest the contract. We'll sue." I pulled out one final document. "You mean like you did with Thompson Electronics 3 years ago? When you tried to steal their retail concept? Or maybe like the lawsuit you almost faced from Henderson Tech last year?" David fell back into his chair, his face ashen. "How did you?" "I've been watching," I said quietly. "Every failed venture, every attempted shortcut, every time you tried to copy someone else's success instead of building your own. I documented everything." "Why?" Mom's voice was barely a whisper. "Because I knew this day would come. The day you'd all realize that success isn't about luck. It's about vision, hard work, and integrity." Kate stood up, her designer dress rustling. "So that's it? You're just going to take the money and abandon your family?" I laughed softly. "Abandon? Like you all abandoned the store, abandoned Dad's dream, abandoned me when I needed support." The room fell silent again. Even David had run out of arguments. But I continued, "You're right about one thing. We are family. Which is why I've made some arrangements." I pulled out a stack of envelopes, each bearing a name. Inside each envelope is a job offer. Real positions at Taylor Tech, based on your actual skills and experience. Not charity. You'll have to work, learn, and prove yourselves. But it's an opportunity. "Why would you do this?" Dad asked, his voice rough with emotion. "Because 15 years ago, I didn't just buy a failing store. I bought a chance to prove something, not just about business, but about character." I handed out the envelopes. "The offers are good for 24 hours. After that, I move forward with the acquisition, and these opportunities disappear." David stared at his envelope, his hands trembling slightly. "And if we accept, then you'll work harder than you ever have. You'll learn what it really takes to build something valuable. And maybe, just maybe, you'll understand that there's no such thing as luck in business." The room was quiet except for the sound of envelopes being opened. Years of resentment, jealousy, and missed opportunities hung in the air like smoke. Mom opened her envelope first, gasping at the details inside. Dad peered over her shoulder, his eyes widening. Kate clutched her envelope to her chest, her carefully maintained facade cracking. David sat alone, his unopened envelope like a weight in his hands. 15 years of believing he was the smart one, the business genius, the one who should have succeeded, all crumbling in a single evening. I checked my watch. In 12 hours, the acquisition would be announced. In 12 hours, everything would change. But right now, in this moment, I watched my family face a truth they'd spent 15 years avoiding. Sometimes the sweetest victory isn't in the money or the success. Sometimes it's in the quiet moment when people finally see themselves, and you, for who they really are. The grandfather clock in the hall struck 9, its deep chimes echoing through the stunned silence. Time was ticking away on their chance at redemption, just as it had ticked away their chance at being part of my success 15 years ago. The question now was, what would they choose? The next morning dawned clear and cold. I sat in my home office, watching the sun rise over the lake while waiting for the stock market to open. In 3 hours, the acquisition would be announced, and Taylor Tech Solutions would become headline news. My phone had been buzzing all night with messages from family members. Kate had been the first to break, sending a tearful voice message at midnight. "I was wrong," she sobbed. "I've been so wrong all these years." Mom and Dad had called at dawn, their voices heavy with regret. They'd spent the night reading through old news articles about my company's rise, finally understanding what their middle child had built while they were busy praising David's failed ventures. But from David, silence. I picked up his unopened envelope from my desk. The job offer inside wasn't just any position, it was a chance for real redemption. VP of Business Development, reporting directly to me. A role that would force him to learn the business properly, to build something legitimate instead of chasing quick wins and copying others' success. A soft knock at my office door interrupted my thoughts. David stood there, looking like he hadn't slept. His usual polished appearance was gone, replaced by something I hadn't seen in 15 years. Humility. "Can we talk?" he asked quietly. I gestured to the chair across from my desk. He sat down heavily, placing his unopened envelope between us. I spent all night thinking, he began, his voice rough, about everything, about why I failed while you succeeded, about why I was so sure you just got lucky. I stayed silent, letting him continue. You know what I realized? Every time I failed, I blamed something else. The market, the timing, the competition. But you never blamed anyone. You just kept building. He picked up the envelope, turning it over in his hands. I didn't open this because I was afraid, not of what was inside, but of what it meant. Accepting this means accepting that I was wrong about everything. Being wrong isn't the worst thing, David, I said quietly. Refusing to learn from it is. He nodded slowly. The non-compete expires today. I could try to compete with you, try to prove I could do it better. That's what the old David would do. And the new David? He opened the envelope carefully, reading the job offer inside. His hands trembled slightly as he reached the details, the responsibilities, the expectations, the clear path of accountability. The new David wants to learn, he said finally. Really learn, not just pretend to know everything. I checked my watch. The market's open in an hour. Once the acquisition is announced, everything changes. If you want that position, you need to decide now. David pulled out a pen, his hand hovering over the signature line. Why did you do this? Why offer us jobs when you could just take your billions and leave us behind? I thought about that night 15 years ago, when they'd all signed away their rights to my future success. Because money isn't the only way to prove someone wrong. Sometimes the best revenge is giving people a chance to see exactly what they missed out on. He signed the contract, the scratch of his pen loud in the quiet office. I won't let you down this time, Marcus. No, I agreed, you won't. Because this time, you're not working for family obligation or ego. You're working to prove something to yourself. My phone buzzed. Kate and our parents had arrived. I'd asked them to come early, to be here when the announcement went live. They entered the office quietly, so different from their usual boisterous entrances. Kate's designer clothes were replaced by a simple business suit. Mom and Dad held their signed acceptance letters like peace offerings. We have about 40 minutes until the market's open, I said, standing. Let's talk about your new roles. For the next half hour, I outlined their positions. Mom would head our charitable foundation, directing millions toward education and small business development. Dad would mentor young entrepreneurs in our incubator program, sharing the practical wisdom he'd gained from both success and failure. Kate, with her social media expertise, would lead our digital marketing division. As I spoke, I could see the change in their faces, the realization that these weren't token jobs or charity positions. These were real opportunities to be part of something significant. At 9:25, my phone rang. It was time. I put the call on speaker. Good morning, everyone. We're ready to proceed with the announcement. The family gathered around my desk as I connected to the video call. The Amazon executives appeared on screen, along with our lawyers and board members. The papers are signed, my lawyer confirmed. Ready when you are, Marcus. I looked at my family. Really looked at them. David, humbled but determined. Kate, finally focused on something beyond herself. Mom and Dad, proud not just of the money, but of what their son had built. Send it, I said. Within seconds, the news hit the wires. Amazon acquires Taylor Tech Solutions for $4.7 billion. My phone exploded with notifications. The office phones began ringing. Email alerts chimed continuously. But in that moment, something more important was happening in my office. My family was witnessing not just the culmination of my success, but the beginning of their own second chances. Congratulations, little brother, David said softly. You did it. Not luck. Not chance. You. Kate wiped tears from her eyes. We should have believed in you. No, I corrected her. I needed to believe in myself. Sometimes that's enough. Mom stepped forward, holding up her acceptance letter. We won't waste this opportunity, Marcus. We'll make you proud. I smiled, remembering that scared young man sleeping on a storeroom couch, coding through the night, believing in something no one else could see. I know you won't waste it, I said, because now you understand what I learned 15 years ago. Success isn't about luck. It's about seeing something others don't, and having the courage to build it anyway. The sun was fully up now, painting the lake in shades of gold. Outside, reporters were already gathering at the gate. The quiet moment would soon be shattered by interviews, press conferences, and the chaos of a multi-billion-dollar acquisition. But right now in this office, something more valuable than money was changing hands. Understanding, respect, and maybe, just maybe, a second chance at being a real family. David picked up his new employee badge from my desk, running his fingers over his name and title. So, boss, he said with a slight smile, when do we start? I looked at my watch, then at my family. We already have. The story of Taylor Tech Solutions was about to become business legend. But the real story, the one about a family learning the true meaning of success, the value of hard work, and the power of believing in yourself, that story was just beginning. Sometimes the best revenge isn't in proving others wrong. Sometimes it's in giving them a chance to prove themselves right. The text message from my mother arrived 3 days before Christmas, just as I was finishing up a major acquisition deal in my office. Emma, darling, about Christmas dinner. Perhaps it's better if you don't come this year. Your sister Olivia is bringing her new fiancé. He's a state senator, you know, and we need to maintain a certain image. You understand, right? Love, Mom. I stared at my phone, feeling that familiar ache in my chest. Even after all these years, after everything I'd accomplished, I was still the family disappointment. Sitting in my corner office on the 47th floor of the Astor building, overlooking the Manhattan skyline, I couldn't help but laugh at the irony. My mother had no idea that the struggling consultant she was so ashamed of was actually the CEO of Summit Industries, one of the largest consulting firms in North America. Miss Parker? My assistant Sarah's voice came through the intercom. The board is ready for the global tech acquisition call. Thank you, Sarah. I straightened my designer suit. Not that anyone in my family would recognize it as such. They still thought I shopped at discount stores. As I prepared for the call, my mind drifted back to where this all began. 10 years ago, I had stood in our family's living room, trying to explain my decision to leave my prestigious junior analyst position at my father's company. "You're throwing away everything we built for you," Dad had shouted, his face red with anger. "And for what? To start your own business? Don't be ridiculous." My sister Olivia had sat on the expensive leather couch, smirking. She was already a rising star at Parker Financial, our father's company, following the path that had been laid out for her since birth. "Emma's always been the rebellious one," she'd said with fake sympathy. "She just doesn't understand how the real business world works." Oh, how wrong they'd been. While they thought I was struggling with a small consulting practice, I was actually building Summit Industries from the ground up. I worked 18-hour days, sacrificed every comfort, and poured every penny I had into my company. And now, Summit Industries was worth billions, though we operated so quietly that most people had no idea who owned us, including my family, including Parker Financial. A knock on my office door interrupted my thoughts. "Miss Parker?" Sarah entered with a stack of documents. "The final contracts from Parker Financial just arrived. They're ready for your signature." Ah, yes, the contract. The delicious irony of it all. Parker Financial, my father's pride and joy, had been desperately trying to secure a partnership with Summit Industries for months. They had no idea they were essentially begging for their prodigal daughter's approval. I picked up my phone and reread my mother's text. "Need to maintain a certain image." My laptop pinged with a new email from Olivia. "Emma, heard Mom texted you about Christmas. Don't take it personally. You know how important appearances are to her. Besides, Senator Richards is very particular about the company he keeps. It's really better this way. Maybe once you've made something of yourself, you can join us again. Live." I set my phone down and looked at the stack of contracts on my desk. The partnership would be worth millions to Parker Financial. They were counting on it to fund their expansion into international markets. My father had been bragging about it for weeks, according to my sources, and all it needed was my signature. Sarah appeared in the doorway again. "Your father's on line 1. He wants to discuss the contract signing ceremony." I picked up the phone, adopting the professionally distant tone I always used when dealing with Parker Financial. "Emma Mitchell speaking." I used my mother's maiden name in business specifically to avoid detection. "Ms. Mitchell." My father's voice was eager, ingratiating, so different from the dismissive tone he used with his younger daughter. "I just wanted to confirm everything's set for the signing ceremony tomorrow. This partnership means everything to our company." I thought about Christmas dinner, about Olivia's smug email, about years of being treated like a failure. "Actually, Mr. Parker," I said smoothly, "I've been reviewing the contracts and I have some concerns." "Concerns?" I could hear the panic creeping into his voice. "What concerns? Everything was approved by your board." "Things change," I replied. "Perhaps we should discuss this in person. Why don't you bring your family to the signing ceremony tomorrow? After all, Parker Financial is a family company, isn't it?" Yes, of course. I'll bring everyone. My wife, my daughter Olivia." "All your daughters," I corrected him firmly. "Oh." His voice dimmed slightly. "Well, Emma's not really involved in the business." "All your daughters, Mr. Parker," I repeated, "or there will be no signing ceremony." After he agreed and hung up, I sat back in my chair, gazing out at the city lights. Tomorrow, my family would walk into my office expecting to meet the mysterious CEO of Summit Industries. Instead, they would come face to face with their greatest disappointment. Sarah appeared one last time. Shall I prepare the conference room for tomorrow's event? I smiled, fingering the contract papers on my desk. Yes, and Sarah? Make sure the photographers are ready. I want to capture every moment when they realize exactly who they've been dealing with. As night fell over Manhattan, I stayed in my office, planning every detail of tomorrow's revelation. My family wanted to maintain a certain image. Well, they were about to learn what real success looked like, and Christmas dinner would never be the same again. The morning of the contract signing, I arrived at the office 2 hours early. The conference room on the 47th floor had been meticulously prepared. Fresh flowers arranged on gleaming mahogany tables, elegant place cards marking each seat, floor-to-ceiling windows offering a stunning view of Manhattan's skyline. Your family just arrived in the lobby, Sarah informed me, her expression carefully neutral. She'd been with me since the beginning, one of the few people who knew the whole truth. Should I send them up? I checked my reflection in the window. Gone was the deliberately understated clothing I wore around my family. Today, I wore a crisp Armani suit, Louboutin heels, and my grandmother's vintage Cartier watch, the only inheritance she'd left me, along with her belief in my potential. No, I replied, smoothing my jacket. Had them wait. I want to make an entrance. 20 minutes later, I stood in my private elevator, watching the floor numbers tick upward. My phone buzzed, another text from my mother. Emma, where are you? Your father says it's crucial you attend this meeting. Don't embarrass us by being late. I smiled, slipping the phone back into my pocket as the elevator doors opened. Through the glass walls of the conference room, I could see them all. My father pacing nervously, my mother fixing Olivia's already perfect hair, and my sister preening in her reflection, probably rehearsing her most ingratiating smile for the mysterious CEO. Senator Richards, Olivia's fiancé, sat examining the contract papers with an expression of barely concealed boredom. He'd never met me. Olivia had made sure of that, but he was about to. I nodded to Sarah, who opened the conference room doors. Ladies and gentlemen, she announced, Ms. Emma Mitchell, CEO of Summit Industries. The silence that followed was absolute. I could hear the soft hum of the air conditioning as I walked into the room, my heels clicking deliberately against the marble floor. My mother's champagne glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on the polished table. My father's face had gone from red to white in seconds. But it was Olivia's expression that I would remember forever. Pure, unadulterated shock as her carefully constructed world of superiority crumbled around her. Hello, family, I said calmly, taking my seat at the head of the table. Shall we begin? This is impossible, my father stammered. You're a small-time consultant. Am I? I opened the folder in front of me. Interesting. Because according to these documents, I'm the CEO of the company you've been desperately trying to partner with for the past 6 months. The senator cleared his throat, looking between me and his shell-shocked fiancée. I'm sorry. What exactly is happening here? Oh, forgive my sister's rudeness. I smiled sweetly at Olivia. She should have introduced us at Christmas dinner. But wait, I wasn't invited, was I? Something about maintaining a certain image. My mother found her voice. Emma, darling, there's been a terrible misunderstanding. Has there? I cut her off, my voice sharp. Let's review, shall we? I pressed a button on the conference table, and the wall screen lit up with a series of emails and text messages. Here's you telling me I'm not successful enough to attend family gatherings. Here's Olivia suggesting I'm an embarrassment to the family name. And here, I paused for effect, is Dad practically begging for this partnership, completely unaware he was negotiating with his disappointing younger daughter. The silence in the room was deafening. Sarah quietly distributed copies of the contract, or rather, what remained of it. My father flipped through the pages frantically. These aren't the same terms we discussed. No, I agree pleasantly. They're not. You see, I've had time to reconsider this partnership. In fact, I've had years to consider exactly how I wanted this moment to play out. Olivia, finally finding her voice, leaned forward. You can't do this. Daddy's been planning this expansion for months. The board is counting on it. I turned to her, letting my smile fade. You mean like how I counted on my family's support when I was building my company from nothing? Like how I counted on being treated with basic respect at family gatherings? That was different, my mother protested weakly. We were just trying to protect you from disappointment. No, I cut her off. You were protecting your image, your precious social standing. Well, congratulations. You've succeeded in creating exactly the image you wanted. The whole business world will know exactly who the Parkers are after today. I stood up, smoothing my jacket. The partnership deal is off. Summit Industries will be acquiring Global Tech directly, which, as I'm sure Dad has realized by now, will effectively block Parker Financial from expanding into the international market. My father slumped in his chair, the full implications hitting him. Without this partnership, without the expansion it would have funded, Parker Financial would remain exactly what it was, a mid-sized regional firm, forever in the shadow of Summit Industries. You can't do this, he whispered. We're family. I paused at the door, turning back one last time. Family? That's interesting, because according to the text messages I received yesterday, I'm not successful enough to be part of this family. I wonder. I pretended to think for a moment. Will I be successful enough for Christmas dinner now? The silence that followed me out was deafening. Through the glass walls, I could see my mother dabbing at her eyes with an expensive handkerchief, my father staring blankly at the contract papers, and Olivia, perfect, successful Olivia, slumped in her chair, her carefully constructed world lying in pieces around her. Sarah fell into step beside me as I walked back to my office. That was quite a show, she said quietly. Are you okay? I looked down at my phone, where another desperate text from my mother was flashing. Cancel the Christmas dinner, I replied, a small smile playing at my lips. I have other plans. The true fallout was just beginning, and I had a feeling the holidays were about to get very interesting indeed. The aftermath of the contract signing was exactly what I expected. A hurricane of desperate calls, manipulative messages, and increasingly panicked attempts at reconciliation. My phone buzzed constantly. Emma, sweetheart, we need to talk about this as a family. Mom, you're destroying everything I built. Dad, can't we discuss this like rational business people? Olivia. I ignored them all while Summit Industries proceeded with the Global Tech acquisition. Without the partnership, Parker Financial's stock price began to drop. The business news was ruthless. Parker Financial, low CSCRUCYAL PA, uncanny A. HI. BUHG. Summit Industries. FANILYDRAMA failed MERGER. Parker stock PLUNETS as international expansion. One week after the failed signing, I sat in my office reviewing the latest acquisition reports when Sarah appeared at my door. "Your sister's here again," she said. "Third time this week. But this time she's alone. No senator fiancé." I glanced at the security feed on my laptop. Olivia stood in the lobby. But something was different. Gone was her usual perfectly polished appearance. She looked tired. "Send her up," I said after a moment's consideration. Olivia walked into my office like a stranger, her eyes taking in the expansive space, the view, the clear symbols of success she'd never noticed in her failing sister. "Nice office," she said quietly. "Bigger than mine at Parker Financial. Though I suppose that's not saying much anymore." "What do you want, Olivia?" She sank into one of the visitor chairs. Senator Richards called off the engagement. I raised an eyebrow. Really? The perfect power couple didn't survive a little financial setback. He said he couldn't be associated with a failing family business. She laughed bitterly. Apparently, I'm not successful enough for his image. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. "Dad's drinking again," she continued. "The board is questioning his leadership. Mom's social circle is buzzing with gossip. Everything's falling apart. And it's all because of me?" I interrupted. "No, Olivia. It's falling apart because it was built on appearances rather than substance, just like your engagement." She flinched. "I deserved that." "You deserved a lot more than that." I leaned forward. "Do you know what it was like, watching you all celebrate each other's successes while treating me like a failure? Having Mom plan elaborate parties for your promotions while she couldn't even remember what my company was called. We thought you were struggling. You never asked." I stood up, anger finally breaking through my carefully maintained composure. "Not once in 10 years did any of you actually ask about my work. You were too busy looking down on me to notice I had surpassed all of you." Tears slipped down Olivia's cheeks, real ones this time, not the calculated drops she usually produced for effect. "I was horrible to you." "Yes, you were. Can you ever forgive me?" I studied her for a long moment. "Forgiveness isn't the issue, Olivia. Trust is. And trust has to be earned." Just then, my office door burst open. My parents rushed in, ignoring Sarah's protests. "Emma." My father's voice boomed, though it lacked its usual authority. "This has gone far enough. You've made your point." "Hi." I remained seated, watching them. "And what point would that be?" "That you're successful," my mother said quickly. "That we were wrong about you. We understand now, darling. You can stop punishing us." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You think this is about punishment? About proving my success?" I stood up, walking to the window. "This is about consequences, about finally showing you that your actions, your dismissal, your condescension, your casual cruelty, have real effects. We're your parents," my father said, his voice breaking slightly. "Everything we did was to protect you." "No." I turned back to face them. "Everything you did was to protect your image." "Well, congratulations. Your image is now exactly what you've made it. A failing company, a broken engagement, and a family in crisis." "What do you want from us?" Olivia asked quietly. "Want?" I considered the question. "I wanted your support when I was building my company. I wanted your respect when I succeeded. I wanted to be treated like a daughter instead of an embarrassment." I paused. "But now, I don't want anything from you." My mother began to cry, but I'd seen too many of her performances to be moved. "Please, Emma, it's almost Christmas." "Ah, yes, Christmas." I smiled coldly. "The dinner I wasn't successful enough to attend. Tell me, do you still need to maintain a certain image for the senator? Or has that requirement changed now that he's abandoned ship?" My father stepped forward. "Name your price. Whatever you want. Board seats, shares in Parker Financial." "You still don't get it, do you?" I shook my head. "I don't want anything you have. Summit Industries is worth more than Parker Financial could ever be. What I wanted was a family who valued me for who I am, not what I could offer them." I pressed a button on my desk, and Sarah appeared instantly. "Please show them out, and have security update the no-entry list." "Emma, please." My mother tried one last time. "We can fix this." "No, Mom. You can't fix 10 years of dismissal and disrespect with one tearful apology. Actions have consequences. Consider this your lesson in real business." After they left, I sat in my office as darkness fell over the city. My phone buzzed with a message, not from my family this time, but from my grandmother's old friend Margaret, who had supported me when I was first starting Summit Industries. "Heard about what happened with your family. Your grandmother would be proud. Christmas dinner at my place this year?" I smiled, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. Sometimes family isn't about blood, it's about who believes in you when no one else does. The next morning, I called a board meeting at Summit Industries. It was time to announce our next major move, a complete overhaul of the consulting industry, starting with the acquisition of several regional firms. Parker Financial wasn't on the list. As I stood before my board, outlining our expansion plans, I thought about my family's Christmas dinner, happening without me. They would sit around their expensive table, picking at their perfect meal, trying to maintain their precious image. Meanwhile, I would be building something real, something lasting, not just a successful company, but a life where I never had to pretend to be less than I am. A week later, a small package arrived at my office. Inside was my grandmother's old business card holder, with a note from Margaret. "She always said you'd outshine them all." Looks like she was right. I placed the card holder on my desk, a reminder that success isn't about who accepts you at your peak, but who believed in you from the beginning. My family had wanted to maintain a certain image. Well, they got their wish, just not the image they'd hoped for. And me, I finally had exactly the image I'd earned. Successful, powerful, and completely free from their expectations. The next time someone asked about my family, I simply smiled and said, "I have a company to run." Because in the end, that was worth more than any Christmas dinner they could offer.